250. All right.
Okay, it is 6 o'clock and we have a quorum here of members. So I call tonight's Judiciary and Public Safety meeting to order. And we do have an agenda posted online for those who would like to follow our proceedings. So with that, I'm going to close number 1 and open number 2, consideration of minutes for the July 10th, 2023 meeting.
Move to accept the minutes.
You have a second? Any discussion? The minutes are fantastic, so there is no discussion. With that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? That passes. All righty, we have closed item number 2 on the agenda, opening item number 3. Chair comments on meeting and agenda organization by Supervisor Stafford. Okay, a few things tonight. We have a nice full room, which is fantastic. I think we have a few people on Zoom. Since we have a couple items on the agenda, specifically item number 10, which is the role of the supervisor, the ad hoc. So for items number 10, 11, and 14, right? Yep. Those comments, we're going to hold off until we talk about that on the agenda. The reason for that is I don't want to have a lot of upfront comments on a variety of things and then us trying to revisit that as we actually talk about that item. So for those items, so the ad hoc for committee structure and the ad hoc for supervisor compensation, I'd like to hold those comments to the agenda item itself. I will allow both in-person and Zoom comments if we have them, just so you all know. Beyond that, any other comments within the jurisdiction of this committee would be handled in item number 4. So we'll talk about everything else on item 4, except for anything that's with the ad hoc task force.
Is that with the rule for electronic devices?
I'm sorry, no, it would not be that one. So
It will not be that.
it will just be for the ad hoc.
Okay.
If I hit that one, I'm sorry. The other thing is we're going to make a slight change in the actual agenda for tonight. Item number 17, which is consideration vote on an ordinance to amend the Winnebago County General Code related to possession of marijuana and cannabis, will be moved up on the agenda and will happen right after sheriff's report. And if you're following on the agenda, so that would be right after 8, in between 8 and 9. So we're moving 17 to after 8 on the agenda, right after the sheriff's report. Okay? Okay, with that, those are all my comments for this evening. With that, I will close item number 3, open item number 4, which is public comments within the jurisdiction of the committee. Anything on the agenda or anything that would follow in this, within our purview. I would ask, we're going to start with the in-room individuals first, and then we'll go to Zoom. When you're called, I ask you to come up to the podium, state your name and your address for the record, and then go ahead with your comments. And these are comments. We don't typically go back and forth, just so you know. We're here to listen and understand your perspective. So with that, I'll open up the comments in the room. Yes.
My name is Caleb Schmidt. I live at 8033 Marsh Road. It's town of Wolf River, but it's technically Fremont, Winnebago County. I work for Keith Farm. I do their online advertising for marketing digital listing. So I was born, raised, and voted straight Republican. I am not a recreational marijuana user. Unfortunately, I've been diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer, and I'm undergoing aggressive chemotherapy. In the state of Wisconsin, I don't have the option to use medical marijuana. I believe Wisconsin is losing a lot of revenue to Illinois, Minnesota, or Michigan. I think it's time for the state to loosen up the restrictions as it applies to marijuana. I think, I would ask that you consider Brian's effort as proposal. And that we stop extorting money out of hardworking people for big.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Anyone else would like to speak within the room here? Yes, please come up and state your name and address for the record.
Shauna Costera, 1882 Clareville Road. What is my time limit?
There is none,
Okay. And one more question, am I,
but don't go like super long.
I won't,
Okay,
but, and is it only on the agenda items?
no, it's anything within a jurisdiction of JPS.
Okay, so, so I, am here to talk about a few things. The last thing I will talk about is my praise of some different departments that I was involved with. I'm here in loving memory of James Hoffman, who, is a local resident, Clareville Road. He passed yesterday. He is a long-term printer, out of Oshkosh and a veteran. So moving on, I would like to give input that road speeds in the rural areas, for example, Nakaima, let's say, I'd like to see those stay 45 or more. Black Wolf, when you're in that area, they have 55. And I understand people are living close by, you know, and all the traffic and all that, but it's certainly nice. I would like to see some of those moved up to 55, frankly. And of course, there's road studies, but because I live right on Clareville, I would, you know, you wouldn't accept my road study, but, so number two, hot billboards. I have, concern that we're not able to, monitor, censor, if you will, billboards that promote cannabis from Michigan, for example. I don't understand that. I'm not quite sure why there would be, that we can't restrict something that is not legal at this point, if that makes sense. Number three, border drugs. We had a very impressive presentation a while ago on opioid epidemic. When I asked, have we looked at the source of those from our borders, north and south, there was crickets. I don't understand that. You're asking me as a supervisor, not you, to support millions and millions of dollars for opioid, but yet can we talk about the source that they could be coming in, you know, and maybe, yeah, I have a concern about that. Number four, and I have one more, the Citizen Academy. I would love to be part of Citizen Academy. I think that's really exciting. I don't know if I can, but I would encourage that. And
I think it's full.
okay, great. Okay, sounds good.
We offer it yearly though.
And yearly, yep.
Yeah.
And then I would like to race through this really quick, if I can. And okay. So hello, Sheriff's Department. Okay. I am the witness friend to blank blank on Highway 44 incident. This was written on May 24th. My friend is doing well at my home after an overnight observation of a smaller brain bleed from the fall. There was an incident where a longtime husband, dementia, struck her. She fell, her head hit a barrel and had an overnight stay. I mainly write to thank you. And first I'll mention that I thoroughly explained the Chapter 55 emergency detention issue with, you know, son, and he still needs, okay. He still needs to be in protective care. The person that was staying with me continues to be concerned for her husband because she feels the only way he is a danger to himself is medication management. So this is a situation where he came here, had to be arrested. And I have no problem with that, but then he bonded out right away because jail is no place for a person with dementia. And he went back home, unsupervised medicine. And then the wife had to shelter at my house because he had actually come after her. Okay, so anyway, if these two people's feedback could be entered into a writing, we would appreciate it. Mostly though, thank you lots. My, oh my, what you all do daily and hourly is honorable. Responding Officer Miller, I believe his name was so good at his job. He was excellent communicator for the wife and husband. His demeanor, A+. Lieutenant at the incident was clear in protocol and explained things well. It also made me cry as Lieutenant and Officer Miller met with me prior to the necessary arrest. It is so humbling, sobering to be at the thin blue line to sort of really see justice play out. Senior officer who visited with Jack, that would be a third person, who visited with the husband primarily was real helpful in pointing us to ADRC, who I was on the phone with before I witnessed the attack. I was trying to update their records to know so that they would know his behavior was escalating. We are in good hands now with Joel Fenner and the dementia specialist Alicia at the ADRC. Thankful to Dr. Topol, who explained at length Chapter 55 and Chapter 51. Meanwhile, as the husband is home alone, having just had truck keys removed during the, prior to this incident, there is the neighbor to cross, et cetera, et cetera. The end of the story is this: Adult Protective Services. I advocated for detention, not a detention, but an emergency placement. Thankfully, he was only home alone for 1 week. And we worked through it, and he is now in a protected environment. And thank you, Sheriff's Department. Thank you, Adult Protective Services, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. Any other comments within the gallery? Okay. Any comments on Zoom? Do you have anything? Good. No? Okay. It's just those. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. With that, we are going to close item 4 on the agenda and move to item 5, which is communications shared by committee members. Anyone have anything to say? Supervisor Jeopardy.
Yes. So the Justice and Public Safety Committee for the National Attorneys Association met on Friday, July 21st at 9 a.m. and it concluded a little bit before 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There was a long series of presentations, and then we voted on resolutions at around 3:40 in the afternoon. And those were the resolutions that were forwarded to you before the last board meeting. All of those resolutions passed. And I did forward the slide deck, the entire slide deck of our meeting to the county clerk this morning. You may not have received it yet. You will later on sometime this week. But one of those presentations was about what is a criminal justice coordinating council and how can we utilize it. And, that's something that we do have that actually most of the counties in Wisconsin has. It's for us, it's considered safe streets. So I found that to be rather fascinating because there are some counties there who they don't even know what criminal justice coordinating council is. And so there, I think it's a kind of a testament to how far it is compared to a lot of other counties around the United States. I did also attend a mental health summit while I was there. And the mental health summit was also a luncheon. And they had a couple of fireside chats at this luncheon. And they focused both on Travis County and Miami-Dade County in regards to what they've been doing for those with mental health conditions that may be involved in the criminal justice system. Miami-Dade County was also part of the mental health summit for the state of Wisconsin at the summit that I attended in Madison maybe about 2 or 3 months ago. And what they've been doing, what Miami-Dade County has been doing, they essentially they saved the county about $120 million with their efforts. And their number of yearly arrests went from 118,000 to 53,000. So it went more than half. So they talked about opening a mental health diversion facility and getting clinicians or social workers embedded in with first responders as well as the police, so that they could, be diverted from incarceration or diverted from the jail and put to services. And they explained the screening process and what they did with that. I found that to be pretty fascinating. And they also they had a break there too. And so during the break, we at the tables that we were at, we got to speak with other counties on what we've been doing too. And I mentioned about what Winnebago County has been doing, and it turns out that that Winnebago County is the envy of a lot of other counties. When I mentioned about the crisis center and somebody supervisor from Anoka County, Minnesota, she was like, "Wow, you guys have a crisis center? We don't have that." And so I think it was just a kind of validation for me and for Winnebago County that we're on the right track. So another thing I wanted to bring up is a meeting that I had today with us from this specific company called Treatment Atlas. And Treatment Atlas is essentially, it's a search engine for those in recovery. So think of, kind of a bad comparison here, but think of like, cars.com, where you're looking for a specific type of car that has certain type of requirements. And so Treatment Atlas is almost something like that for those within recovery. So if you're looking for something where it's like, hey, I think I might be in active addiction, but I also have kids. Is there, childcare available? Do you have, what type of outpatient treatment do you have? And it literally gets into like, what type of insurance that you have. If you don't have insurance, if you pay as you go, if you're Medicaid or Medicare. And it narrows the field of what the exact place that you need to go to. And then you can also leave a review of that treatment facility too. So that's something I intend to bring up at the next Safe Streets meeting, which is in October. I'd like to see if I can get a presentation going so that specifically those involved in drug court, I think that this would be something that they would probably be using daily. But I was very, very fascinated, and I was very pleased with their search engine. So that's what we'll look forward to in the next Safe Streets meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Supervisor Plum?
I was at the last Safe Streets meeting on July 21st. We went over a number of things. We had some updates on drug court, jail reintegration, the 24/7 alcohol and drug program. Judge Walt was there. The Connect program, stop in teen court. We had some updates from DA Spar, Breakwater, and Public Health Department Step Up. A couple things, but chiefly the main thing that we're working on is establishing a subcommittee which will pick the next drug court judge. So that will be formed. I know that it consists of a number of people on that committee. I'm not on there, but they soon should have a process set up for choosing the next drug court judge. So that's what I have. If anybody's looking for the details of those program updates, let me know, or Judge Walt, or any of the coordinators on Safe Streets, and I'd be happy to give you that information. So thank you.
Great. Any thoughts tonight? No? Supervisor? No? Okay. The only comment that I'll make is something that I'm learning more and more about is the Wisconsin, okay, I always say it wrong, Wisconsin Conflict Center?
Resolution Center.
Oh, I did it again.
Winnebago.
Winnebago,
Yes.
sorry, Winnebago. Learning more about it, it's a great organization. Great. I think we have some mediators, right? We have one right there. Fantastic organization. They essentially help the court system go through a lot of the civil cases, small claims, resolve them before it goes into the court system. And I have a family member who went through the mediator training and is now co-mediating and just learning about it from that point of view. It is fantastic, and I think this committee should probably entertain some conversation around that to gain visibility, because I do know that they need more mediators. And it is such a wonderful thing that we have, and I didn't realize that there's only a few counties that really leverage that kind of thing. I believe it's us and Fond du Lac and maybe a couple others.
Yeah, there's I think St. Croix, County has something
Okay.
similar to that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring it up because I'd like to bring that up on the agenda at some point, and have a conversation around that and how we as a committee can help facilitate that work. I think would be a good thing. Okay, with that, that is it for item number 5 on the agenda. Opening item number 6, which is update from District Attorney's Office. District Attorney, here at Star.
Right, thank you. So I guess what I try to do usually on these is give some updates on cases that probably are interesting to you and that we're spending time on, just to give you a taste of the things that our prosecutors are spending time on. There are plenty of cases we spend time on that are not so interesting to you, so I'm probably less inclined to talk about the everyday boring ones. But we do have one upcoming case for trial that I thought was of interest, just to illustrate some of the nastier things that we see just occasionally. This is an Oshkosh case. Charges, it's a long list of charges: felon in possession of a firearm, bail jumping, threats to law enforcement, physical abuse of a child, possession of a firearm, and operation of a firearm while intoxicated, pointing a firearm at a person, as well as a number of battery charges. It was a situation though where the defendant was on bond on out of custody on a Fond du Lac case and shouldn't have had a firearm in the first place, had been drinking, got into an altercation with his girlfriend with whom he lived. There's also girlfriend's adult daughter, some of the minor children of the girlfriend, also some grandchildren. There's a lot of people engaged with this. But as the fight happened, the defendant had punched a 17-year-old, which I believe was the child of the girlfriend, and then got into an argument with some of the other children, threatened to kill them all, pistol whipped the girlfriend with the gun. Most people then had gotten out of the house. The grandchildren were still in there. The SWAT team was called. They responded, and the defendant at some point became non-responsive. But the SWAT team went in. It appeared he had passed out. He was either asleep or passed out on an air mattress. As he was being taken to jail, he threatened to kill an Oshkosh officer. Just an absolute mess with a lot of things going on. But that is an upcoming trial. That's we never know for sure whether a case is going to go to trial, but it seems to go there. We did have a couple of cases, and as I was looking through these cases, I realized we have a judge present, and I had to make sure that he didn't have any of those cases. He does not. And I'm also.
Comments. Look, we have a phone that has an app on it where I can shut my hearing aids off. When I was talking, I shut my earbuds. Perfect. I was ready for this.
So this in the wake of potentially causing a problem for somebody who was going to be sitting as a juror. I don't want to do that again. But there were 2 cases, and this is kind of illustrative of some of the problems that we sometimes have when we're getting ready for trial. 2 cases that were supposed to go to trial in the last couple of weeks and didn't for different reasons. One of them was a break-in. There was an adult male that lived at a residence, his daughter was about 11 living there with him. Somebody that was associated with him brought a couple other people. They broke into the residence and were going to steal, I believe he had a gun and about $1,500 cash. They wanted to steal this thing. They broke in, but he woke up and he started fighting with 2 of them. 2 of the people who had broken in, 2 of the 3 took off on foot. The victim became the 3rd person on scene until law enforcement got there. This was a national case. And law enforcement ended up interviewing the person that was held on scene. He had part of the story. The victim had the other part of it. The victim has a warrant out for his arrest and was dodging service of the subpoena, and we were not able to find him in time for trial. So that case is unable to go to trial right now. It's currently dismissed. Could be refiled. Kind of watching what happens with the victim, but it was not a situation where we were really going to be able to go to trial without the victim. So again, just something that we have these plans that we start getting ready for the case, and it just doesn't always go according to plan. Another one where something unexpected got in the way. This was a case where the prosecutor had been preparing for the better part of a week, the week before trial. Charges of third-degree sexual assault and false imprisonment. There were multiple translators that were reserved for the trial. And the prosecutor met with the victim 4 days before trial, on Thursday before a Monday trial. And the victim was unsure if she was going to be able to proceed with the trial, and ultimately checked herself into a institution that night to get some services. And that trial was unable to proceed at that time. So again, it's possible that that could end up in a better place later, but there are definitely things that we think about as we're getting ready and try to avoid them, but sometimes it just becomes a situation where a case is not ready to go. But I think both of those cases were right to go, and the defendants wanted to have their trials.
So you said they're dismissed. Does that mean that you have to go through the process of refiling for both of them? Or is it just a situation where it's held in perpetuity until you have the people in place?
Right, and sometimes it depends. In both of these cases, they were dismissed without prejudice, but it can be reissued at some later point. Sometimes if we have a better handle on what the time frame is going to be, we might be more open to keeping something open and in court. These were not situations like that, so they're both dismissed right now, and either one or both could come back. Not sure what happened with those. But I know that, especially that last one, the prosecutor had spent a lot of time getting that ready, and certainly didn't see it going exactly the way it did. We do have a couple of significant sentencings coming up, both with regards to unbiased charges, so drug deliveries causing death. And those are things that we've talked about here before with overdose deaths. So there are not every overdose death results in some sort of a charge. And law enforcement's not always able to figure out who provided the drugs. Sometimes even when we figure out someone that provided drugs, we're not able to figure out if those were the drugs that caused the death. So 2 cases coming up for sentencing. One of them is that latter situation. We had multiple sources of drugs, and we know that this defendant provided drugs, but can't necessarily say these are the drugs that caused the death. So this one is charged as delivery rather than first-degree reckless homicide, which is the unbiased charge. Still, those cases are viewed as more significant than just a normal delivery. Delivery itself is serious, but a delivery where there are multiple drug sources and a death results, that's more serious from a sentencing perspective. That was a Nina case. Again, the issue was basically multiple sources, and that one coming up for sentencing in August. Another that's where there was a conviction for first-degree reckless homicide for drug delivery. That is a sheriff's office case where they worked with other agencies. There was a delivery that happened in Milwaukee. The drugs were brought here and the death occurred here. So as they were working backwards, it was a good investigation where they got in touch with Milwaukee. The Milwaukee Police Department was involved, as well as Department of Criminal Investigations, state investigative agency. There were some controlled buys that were done with the target in Milwaukee with the help of those agencies, and those were primarily conducted by DCI. So there are charges in Milwaukee as a result of that. There's also the charge here for the death. And that's something where that defendant pled no contest is coming up for sentencing in August as well. So again, those are not, it's not always the outcome when there is an overdose death, but that's the idea. When law enforcement starts looking into that, one of the first things they're trying to figure out is there somebody where they can determine who is responsible, or can they follow up? In that Milwaukee case, we weren't sure what we were going to be able to do with that until they worked with those other agencies and were able to get additional files on that charges. So a couple other just kind of assorted updates here. We've talked at various times about prosecutor and public defender pay, and those things were included in the budget that was signed, and those have gone into effect, I think it was 2 weeks ago. We have one vacancy right now. Our vacancy, the job posting was updated in mid-July. We hadn't had really, I don't think, any applications for about 2 months before that. We've had multiple applications since that happened. So it seems like it's working. We have interviews scheduled. I don't know if you'll end up with a new employee out of that, but it instantly seemed to make a difference. I think it's drawing people that probably wouldn't have considered it an option previously. There have been a couple of officer-involved shooting cases that have gotten some attention. 2 of those were Oshkosh situations. One was maybe 4 or 5 months ago. That was in March. The other one was 5 or 6 weeks ago, I believe. And we did have the incident in Nina involving the Winnebago area meg units. just last week. From those two older ones, it's too early to say very much about the more recent one, but from those Oshkosh incidents, both of those were non-fatal shootings. And actually, both of those defendants ultimately were charged with recklessly endangering safety. One for pointing a gun at officers, the other one for driving a vehicle at officers. So those are interesting situations where we don't always know a time frame, and in each of those cases, the officer involved was cleared pretty quickly. In one of the situations, the person who, in the vehicle situation, that case was charged months afterwards. There was some additional investigation that had happened there. In the other situation with the pointing of the firearm at officers, that individual was charged very quickly after. Both of those are going through the court system right now. Those have led to some interesting discussions as the names have not been released either by the investigating agencies or by our office. There have been some requests for those records, and it's a balancing situation involving victim rights and open records, and there isn't a real clear way how that comes down. Finally, legal update is something that we conduct annually. It's primarily at the Oshkosh Police Department. We meet with officers as part of their annual training, and we have about a 2-hour block where we have usually 4 of our prosecutors come in and do that training. We did a separate session just recently with the Oshkosh detectives. We have additional training scheduled with the North End agencies. So we have the Asha Fox Crossing, but that is something that we do annually with Oshkosh Police Department and as often as we can with the North End agencies as well. So that's something that's coming up, and just trying to make sure that to whatever degree possible, we can get everybody on the same page as far as what's happening, updates on laws, and make sure that they understand what the other people do. So that's what I had. I'm saving any of the marijuana related comments till later.
Sounds good. Were there any questions for DA Spar? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, that closes item number 6 on the agenda. Moving to item 7, update on overdoses, suicides, and morgue process, the medical examiner's office. Cheryl Bremer, come on up. Welcome.
Thanks for inviting me. I say my update's very short and to the point. On our overdoses right now, we are at 28 confirmed. So we are 9 away from last year's total for the entire year. We do have several cases that are pending.
So sorry, say that one more time. 28.
28 confirmed overdoses for the year. And several pending.
When you say several, can you put a ballpark number on that?
Right now, I believe there's 5. There's one that we're not sure. We're waiting on a situation.
And then what was last year's overall total?
37 and 41 the year before.
I know I've asked this before, but can I look at this and say we see the same amount kind of going through the rest of the year, or are there peak times that we see during the year? Not really, right?
They're different. No, it just depends. It always seems that it goes in waves, and what those waves are, there's no way to be able to say this is what's going on at this point in time.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, not at all. Not at all. On the suicides, we are at 11, so we are a little under where we were at this point last year. That is a definite plus. The update on the morgue, talked to Mike Elder. It sounded like there were some issues that they were working out with access to be able to get the semis into the evidence garage portion of it. The state denied access off of Jackson Street. But last we heard that it's worked out. There's a different access method, so probably for the next couple of weeks it'll be going to bid.
So we're waiting for it, but yeah, we would be, right?
Very much so.
By about 8 months.
Yeah.
9 months.
Yeah. Did Mike give you, and I'm sorry, because, I want to ask you to speak for him. Did he give any update in terms of timing, in terms of what the overall time frame is?
Probably looking at about 2 months from what he had said.
For bidding?
Yeah, what they're going out to bid and getting everything finalized. I think the soonest it would be like 2 months.
Or this is next year for sure.
Quite possibly.
I mean, in terms of having an actual work.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, yes, Supervisor Eisen.
Cheryl, you've explained to us the overdose deaths.
Mhm.
Do you have any statistics on the overdose saves?
I don't. I shouldn't say that. So I do as far as, anybody that has gone into the emergency room. They do report those, that we have an overdose spike team. So the hospitals report, the ERs do in real time, anybody that, you know what I mean, that they believe overdosed. EMS does, but it's not real time. A lot of
There's a
times.
lot of
it's
Narcan out there. There ought to be some kind of statistics, on, how many, saves. I don't know, would the sheriff be able to help us in that department?
The issue there too is if Narcan is given by a family member or a friend and EMS is never called, we never know. So that's.
Yes, Supervisor Blum.
I just may add, it would be really nice to see those statistics, but I wonder if we're running into a HIPAA violation.
True, because technically HIPAA does apply. Like I said, the emergency room does report without any type of demographic, or identifying information, but
Did they report that information to the medical examiner's office?
no, it actually is reported to Madison. All the hospitals in Winnebago County, are in that program. So they report to
So you
Madison, and Madison is
You're
the
not in
one
the
that is
loop on that
filing.
information.
Yep. Yeah, and if we have, 3 or more non-fatal overdoses in a day, then it sends out what's called a box alert to anybody that's involved in it. But that is usually 2 days, a lag on that one.
Question and follow up super quickly. How responsive has DHS been giving you that information? How much information do they even give you? I know you said the box alerts, do they give you much else or not really?
They give a general age range, they give zip code. With the emergency departments or emergency rooms, they will give some indication on what, they suspected opioid overdose, you know what I mean, but they, without toxicology to confirm, they can't give. So I mean, we get some information, but
Supervisor Hanson.
Have you seen any change in the overdoses or pending as far as opiate versus the xylazine? The xylazine going up, down, staying the same?
we have not had a confirmed xylazine overdose so far, or that has been in the substance. I have heard from some of the hospitals that they believe that they're seeing, some of their wounds or ulcers, they believe may be xylazine related. But not, you know what I mean? That can't be confirmed. That's just what they're thinking.
Thank you. Supervisor Duffy.
Yes, can I get an update on the bereavement coordinators position?
I am not doing the bereavement coordinator position.
Okay.
I worked with, the health department and the victim crisis response team, which for the last 8 years, I've been trying to get them to cover Oshkosh. We've been working hard to do that. Some stuff came up and ended up falling through, but within the next month or 2, they will be servicing Oshkosh as well. So all of Winnebago County. And they'll be doing technically what the bereavement coordinator would have been doing out of our office.
Okay.
So they're
Connecting with
amazing.
them, then
Yes.
getting that
Yep.
service done.
Yeah, we already work with them very closely. The issue is they didn't service Oshkosh.
Right.
That was the only law enforcement agency, that they didn't, and now they will be. We just met last week with Oshkosh PD and the directors, and
Okay.
super excited.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Any additional questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay, that closes item number 7 on the agenda. Opening item 8, Sheriff's Report.
Good evening.
Well,
We'll start off with EAA. July 24th to the 30th. Record attendance this year, approximately 677,000. Last year's record was 650,000, so. The sponsor, EAA sponsored a 5K on the flight line. That was a fundraiser for our K9, so I'm waiting to find out what that will yield. We did have 2 separate fatal aircraft crashes, as you know, one being over Lake Winnebago or in Lake Winnebago. And the other being a gyrocopter and a helicopter colliding, resulting in 2 deaths and 2 injuries. We still have some work to do on the Lake Winnebago crash. Some pieces of the plane we still need to recover, so they can complete their investigation. It will take months for NTSB to put it all together. I will review the EAA after action report with you at September's meeting, which will actually be in August. Staffing, any questions about any of those?
yes, Supervisor.
So the first one is, well, I guess just a compliment. I went to EA for 5 days because I'm an aviation nutcase. And I saw you guys all over the grounds. I really appreciate what you do with that. And just a job well done overall. The next question I have is about that plane crash with that Texan over Lake Winnebago. Will the NTSB be able to fish out all of the components they need before the increases?
Yes, we'll be able to get what we can, and we'll do that for them. You know, there was a lot of debris, so we're hopeful that we can get everything that they need to complete their investigation.
Thank you.
Staffing, we have 7 correction deputy vacancies. We have 2 starting August 21st, 2 starting September 18th, and 2 in background. We have 8 interns that start August 14th. Patrol vacancies, we have no vacancies at this point. However, I talked about retirements in December, so we're creating an eligibility list for that. We have 2 dispatch vacancies, and interviews are scheduled for this Thursday. Our booking security associate is full we have 1+ employee. So we have a project employee that will fill. We have people that go on maternity leave. We have 1 that's scheduled for maternity leave, et cetera, et cetera. So they'll fill those spots, cutting the overtime. Contract negotiations have begun with the Deputies Association. For those of you that haven't followed the news, Department of Corrections new starting wage is $33 an hour. And with some incentives, it could be as high as 41, depending upon where they're working and what the vacancy rate is. That is a huge competitor to us. And hopeful, now I understand that we won't be able to get our employees to that $33 an hour mark, but we're gonna have to get closer. We're gonna lose people.
Where are we right now for the benefit of?
27.36. So with the new contract coming up, you know, we're gonna have to do something, because at almost, well, over $5.50 an hour, that's worth the move. On July 26th, we had a medical event in one of our housing units. It was an overdose. The initial medical response by jail staff and our health services unit. They administered multiple doses of Narcan. Person was transported to the hospital, and they are still there at this point. The investigation was turned over to Brown County, as it was very serious in nature. We should have something back from Brown County fairly soon. On the results of that, I'm confident everything's fine. Our current jail counts are 216. We have 18 ES sanctions, 3 Huber, and we have 30 on our GPS program. And we'll present our budget proposal either in the September meeting, which is in August, or the October, depending upon our conversations with the county exec's office and when those occur.
Did you see, was there an uptick in population during EAA?
No, we do not make, we make very few in custody arrests from VA. Even though there's nearly 700,000 people, very few.
It's right here.
Mhm.
Supervisor Isaac.
Sheriff, could you give us an update on the status of the boathouse?
Well, this month, we are told that it'll be complete. Everything around, the pilings are in, everything is in, the deck around, the wet part of the boathouse is done. We're just waiting for the building to be built. It's a subcontractor. We were told that August they would complete the rest of the boathouse. So we're hopeful for the last part of the boating season to be able to use that. Lift is in, everything
Fantastic.
is done.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Other than
pleasant
the-
surprise.
For a thing that we didn't think we were gonna have,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sorry, were you done with your report?
That's it.
Any additional questions from the committee? No. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna close item 8 on the agenda, which is the sheriff's report. And now we're going to open, it'll be new 9 or 17 if you're following along. And just as a reminder for those who haven't been here in a while, how we do things is when we introduce a resolution or an ordinance, I ask the person who's sponsoring it to introduce it to the committee. At that time, after it's been introduced, we then go to the board or to the committee and ask for a consideration, for formal consideration for discussion, okay? So we're gonna have the person introduce it. There'll be a motion if the committee wants to hear it. And then we'll have discussion at that point. And this next one coming up, I'm gonna ask both Sheriff Motz and DA Spar for their insights as well, after the introduction. Okay. So with that, I'm going to open agenda item consideration vote ordinance, amend Winnebago County General Code sections 9.17 sub 4 and 9.18 sub 4 relating to possession of marijuana and or cannabis and THC paraphernalia. Supervisor Brian Defferty.
Thank you, Chair. My fellow Winnebago County residents, it's time. It was time before, but it is especially time now. The state of Wisconsin has painted itself into an uncomfortable corner to the point where we are losing residents and tourism due to our current cannabis state laws. It is important not to fall to the scare tactics often mentioned when it comes to cannabis. The gateway drug myth is just that, a myth. Multiple peer-reviewed studies have shown that many factors can lead to someone forming a substance use disorder, including personal, social, genetic, and environmental factors such as trauma. Some suggest that cannabis affects the neural pathways in the brain that causes people to develop a taste for drugs. There is little evidence to back up these claims, though. From an article published in Psychology Today in July 2018, substance use can depend on contextual factors such as neighborhood and community environment, level of parental supervision, unique characteristics of the individual, including their biology and life experience. The city of La Crosse also adopted this very similar ordinance 3 years ago. I have seen the 2022 police report of their crime statistics. Driving under the influence arrests went from 297 in 2020 to 253 in 2022. That's a 20% reduction. Theft and larceny charges went from 2001 in the year 2020 to 1490 in 2022. That's 500 less offenses. As for traffic collisions, the city of La Crosse showed that in 2019, pre-pandemic, they had 2,136 state reportable traffic collisions. In 2022, it's at less than 1,850, a reduction of 300 traffic collisions before the ordinance change. Don't get me wrong, I'm not making a correlation with these statistics, but just the same, it also flies in the face of any claim that such a change in penalties would ever influence both traffic collisions and crime. And let's address the obvious. Wisconsin is a drinking state. It's in our culture. Places such as the Tavern League has a heavy lobby on issues like these. Things such as alcohol and nicotine are just as addictive as cannabis, and even worse, research has shown that reciprocal relationship between excessive alcohol use and violence. Studies have shown that alcohol use may promote aggressiveness, while victims of the violence may be led to drinking following more physical harm. A study from the Johns Hopkins Blomberg School of Public Health in 2015, titled "Alcohol and Violence," suggests that the more a person drinks, the more severe violence may become. But I feel I don't need to mention studies here. Anyone knows what happens if somebody gets too drunk. Arguments happen, fights happen. Even worse, sexual violence and suicide happens while under the influence. I am certainly not saying we should make alcohol and tobacco illegal. What I am saying, though, is there are already legal vices well within our arm's reach, and with freedom comes responsibility. If we defend freedom, that also means defending one's right to sometimes make bad choices, as long as they are not harming anyone else. As a person such as myself, that is 1 month away from 6 years of full sobriety, I certainly do not have any inclination to start using, nor would I automatically recommend use for others. But I defend one's right to have a choice, for I do not know how to run someone else's life better than my own. And there has been a question of how much is 25 grams? This is basil from my garden, by the way. And I highly recommend that you open it and smell it because it smells wonderful. But this gives you an idea of what 25 grams is. Enough for personal use, certainly not enough for, some sort of large distribution. But you're welcome to come up and take a look, smell it if you like. But this gives you kind of a more illustrative idea of what 25 grams is, because I know that has been a question that was volleyed to me before. So with that, I will move to amend Winnebago County General Code sections 9.174 and 9.184 relating to the possession of marijuana and or cannabis and THC paraphernalia set forth by this section 8.
Do we have a second? I am going to second it because I do think that we need to put this to rest. One way or another, I think we need to have the conversation. So I'm going to second. And then go to discussion. Any discussion? Supervisor Hanson.
I'm glad you second because I would like to have the discussion. I'm really conflicted on this and need some guidance as I do some research and listening to Sheriff, Mr. Spar, and here's where my conflict lies on this. To sum it up, the state of Wisconsin needs to do something or get off the pot. It's absolutely time for Madison to decide one way or another what they're going to do. I don't know if this resolution will move that needle one way or the other. The other thing that I'm afraid of, and I absolutely agree with the freedom of choice that Supervisor Defferty brought up. The second conflict I have is, as of right now, the Biden administration has yet to remove marijuana as a Schedule I substance. What I want to avoid in any way, shape, or form is, as unlikely as it might be, a conflict between the states and the federal government, where the federal government steps in with the Supremacy Clause, Article 6. That I think would be an absolute disaster, and why the state of Wisconsin needs to make a decision one way or the other, because it seems like there is a disagreement everywhere. In 2013, the Department of Justice released what they called the Cole Memo, that talked about the individual states legalizing and or communities legalizing and not. That was controversial. You could look it up and read it. It was rescinded by Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Then the next conflict I have is it seems that even within from county to county, for example, Dane County doesn't do anything for 1 ounce or under at 18 or over. That is very different than Fond du Lac County. So again, there has got to be some consistency coming forward from the state of Wisconsin. I am really open to hearing arguments on both sides on this, because I guess, again, what it comes down to is the state of Wisconsin has got to do something.
So with that, I would like to invite either Sheriff Motts or DA Spar for any additional insights that you could give this committee as we deliberate this.
Close, I'll start. We did, I had heard, I saw this on the agenda. I know, I appreciate Supervisor Hanson reaching out. We had a little bit of discussion that led me to contact Supervisor Depperding and then reach out to the clerk of courts. So I don't really have a strong position on what everyone does here, but I did want to give some background information and just try to give as much context as possible for the discussion. So I guess one thing that is still there, and Supervisor Hanson alluded to this, that whatever we do on a local level here, there is still the possibility that there are federal or state violations. Now, as far as state violations go, that's something that within this county, my office would be in control of. And I guess what I can tell you, and I know some of us have had this discussion before, but generally speaking, we are not issuing personal use possession cases regarding marijuana. So there are exceptions to that if we have something that's really problematic, but that really came from the problem distinguishing Delta 9 THC, the illegal stuff, from Delta 8 and Delta 10. So the amount of resources that it takes to try to distinguish those just was not worth pursuing those cases. It's a different story for possession with intent to deliver or delivery cases, but personal use not really handled.
So may I ask a question? What do you consider in terms of amount, personal use?
Yeah, so that's where it gets a little tricky. And one of the things I wanted to mention is there's not statutorily a number where it's automatically possession with intent to deliver. The amount matters for sure. As it gets larger, that's easier to show that it's possession with intent rather than just possession. But other things play into that as well as the weight. If somebody has text messages that show they're selling on their phone, and a lot of times when there's a suspicion of dealing, investigators are grabbing phones and taking a look at that stuff. So that could make a possession with intent to deliver case from a smaller quantity. Or we might have situations where there aren't text messages, and we might have a larger quantity where we struggle to make a possession with intent to deliver case. So it doesn't just depend on the weight. So I know we can talk about amounts and say, if it's under a certain amount, then the county ordinance says to handle it a certain way. It's difficult to rely on just assuming that if it's over a certain amount that we're going to be able to handle it as possession. So it doesn't always work that way, but weight is probably the biggest factor in that. So if we have a case where it's a pound, for example, that's pretty clearly a possession. But as we're around an ounce or 2 ounces, those are not quite as straight. So there isn't something in the statute. I guess that's what I wanted to make. There isn't a number in the statute where it says if you have over this amount, that's automatically possession. We just don't have something.
There's no standard even at the county level of what that is, because you consider a variety of other factors.
Right, correct. So it would be difficult, and I guess I don't want anyone to assume that if you put a ceiling on this and say if it's under this, then it's going to be handled this way. If it's over that, then we know it's going to go a different way. It's not going to be simple like that. So yeah.
To follow through, if I may, just because I need clarification, there's also what I'm going to call the Gossett memo that was released, and what Winnebago County is really charging and not charging. What I really have to reconcile for myself is if this change moves the needle in any direction.
It wouldn't change things for us as far as what we do on criminal personal use cases, regardless of whether there's an ordinance that's being used or not. I don't think it's going to make us say, oh, okay, well, now we'll pursue these personal use cases criminally. It's still not going to be worth the resources. It's still too difficult to distinguish. There's just not something where we're going to put our resources there. So I don't think it would change things for what we're doing. I guess the other couple of things to think about it as you're looking at these, this would only cover a portion of the county. I mean, it's a county ordinance, but there are municipal ordinance as well that are going to be at play here. So Oshkosh Police Department, for example, is using the Oshkosh code, and they would still have whatever, I don't remember exactly what theirs says, but they would still be operating with those penalties. And so even if the county board changes what the county level ordinance looks like, Oshkosh still has theirs, Menasha still has theirs, Neenah can still do what they're going to do. So one of the problems that creates, and one of the things that I think about in situations like this, lack of uniformity can be problematic. And so when we talk about wanting the state to act, I agree. If we had guidance from the state that applied everywhere, that would be good. And this is a problem going from state to state as well. So we have a situation where right now border states have legalized in various ways, and we haven't. That creates problems, especially on borders of Wisconsin. So we have that problem from state to state, from county to county, but also from municipality to municipality. So the inconsistencies can be problematic because we have people who say, okay, well, I know it's Winnebago County says this, so I can have my marijuana, but then they drive through somewhere else. And now that's a problem. So I guess just the lack of uniformity is something that causes me some concern. It doesn't mean that we should never do something like that, but it's one of the things that I get worried about when we're looking at something like that. I also asked the clerk of courts for numbers on very short notice, and I appreciate that she got them to me, which I know I've talked to a couple of you about. I wanted to get a handle on how many of these tickets were being written. And one of the things I was thinking there was if it's a very small number, then there's maybe less at stake, but also that would be kind of an indicator that this might just be a good tool for law enforcement to have. Or if it's a big number, then it might be something where if someone is approaching this to say, well, we want to make a big change on what enforcement looks like, then it actually could do that. For 2022, for the calendar year, it was about just under 240 tickets for marijuana and paraphernalia combined. So some of those were marijuana tickets. Most of them, I think, were marijuana tickets. Some were paraphernalia tickets. Those are what went through circuit court. So some municipalities have municipal courts. So Neenah and Menasha, for example, have their own courts, so we wouldn't have those. But the clerk of court's office ran those numbers. It was a little bit under 240, and about a little under 150 of those were Oshkosh Police Department tickets. So that would be unimpacted by what we're talking about here. It was, I believe the number was just under 90 that came through the county ordinance that we'd be talking about here. So just to give everyone some idea of what we're talking about, how many situations it would impact.
So any municipality that's city or town would potentially have their own ordinance, what you're saying, right? Some do, some don't. If they don't, they would it go to our ordinance then?
So they could use these, right? But they also could have their own.
But if they don't use their own, does it automatically default to the Winnebago County, or is it just if they choose to?
Right, and I think, and the sheriff might have the answer to this as well, but I think all of our municipalities that have their own police agencies, I believe might have their own already.
Okay.
At least the bigger ones do. Do we know, is that all?
Yes, that's true.
Okay. The only one that I know has been a little tricky is State Patrol, so it's not an agency that has just a small jurisdiction. They're operating statewide. That's one of the things that we've run into problems with, is they're not able to use the county that stands right now. So that, but even all of the other police agencies that we have operating in the county they do have access to their own way.
No, if I'm on 41 going through the city of Oshkosh, that would be the Oshkosh jurisdiction, right? So it'd just be those areas within 41, or pick a state highway, that aren't in one of those municipalities, what we're saying. In those cases, the state patrol would have issues, but not in the other cases.
Correct. Well, State Patrol operates in different places, but also if you're in an area on a highway that's not in one of these cities, not in Oshkosh, not in Neenah,
Right.
You could be in an area where the sheriff's office has jurisdiction as well. So we have different different police agencies having different jurisdictions and then using different ordinances.
Let's start one more question on that. Do we know if this ordinance is close to those other ordinances in the municipalities? Like Nina and Oshkosh?
I don't know what all of them look like.
Okay.
You're talking about the proposed one or the
Correct, the
existing?
proposed
I don't know that anybody else has something that looks like that. I think they have things that look more like the existing.
one. Okay, all right. One second, Supervisor Sloan.
So essentially what you're saying is the waters on this are about as clear as mud.
In some areas, yeah.
Okay. Because we were under the assumption the state would do something. There was talk about bringing up a bill that clearly hasn't happened. Whether or not they actually get to it is beyond anyone's line of thought here, or whether or not they do. I guess the question that I would have for you guys, put you on the spot, but would this make things a little bit more complicated? Not intending to, but would it, essentially? I guess
Well,
it depends on the case.
For me, for my office, I don't think it has a tremendous impact. I think the impact it has, we're talking about approximately 90 cases, where now those were citations that were issued in 2022 that essentially wouldn't have a penalty if this ordinance went through as proposed. What impact does it have for me? I don't know. I mean, if those cases go through the court process, we end up making appearances on them. They don't occupy a tremendous amount of our time. It's not a huge concern for me. It's about, do you want those people prosecuted for those? And I don't know. My only worry is just the issue that it can create for people traveling from place to place or going across these areas that have different laws now.
Before, one second, I want to make sure that, Supervisor Isaac, do you have any comments? No? Okay, please.
Made me think of something else. How would this ordinance affect the MEG unit? Because as I understand, MEG is more than just Winnebago County.
True, but they're not really dealing with ordinances. They're focusing on trafficking. So I think that they wouldn't be, I don't mean to speak for them, but it's not the area that they're really focusing on.
Thank you very much. Sheriff Bonds.
First of all, I sympathize with your situation and have had family members and friends that have gone through. And I wish you the best of luck. I have been told by legislators that there's a movement this fall for medical marijuana. It's serious and it has bipartisan support. So I think we're probably going to see that. As far as the ordinance is written, someone would still get $143.80 ordinance citation because of the costs that are associated with it. So it's not just a buck. There are costs that are associated that we don't control. And I know I said this before, what you see in there is approximately 90 bowls and 60 joints. Is that personal use? Is that, am I sharing? I'm not sure. And that's for you all to decide. And as DA Spar brought up, this does not change the municipalities. Becomes very, now there are differences now in the forfeiture amounts that are charged throughout municipalities, but not all the same. But it does raise some confusion because when you hear $1, well, they don't even care. Yeah, and again, we wrote about 90 citations last year. Oftentimes we don't write anything, we just dispose of it. It depends upon the situation. And that goes back to when I was a patrol cop, not just the trend of now with legalization, it was not always a citation. Rarely is it an arrest. We don't have people sitting in our jail on marijuana possession charges. It's not there. So any kind of correlation between jail population and charges for marijuana possession are just not true. as far as some of the other things that Supervisor Defferting brought up about seeing marijuana use or marijuana detected in crashes, to include fatality crashes, information that I was given by both Michigan and Colorado was an increase in both of those states, along with some other issues. Now, that was with full legalization of marijuana. So we need to make sure we're I stress this, be extremely educated when you're making the decisions that are in front of you.
Just a quick follow-up question. I believe you said, was that 90 citations? Or
90.
90. How many citations did we see, or any, driving while under the influence?
Yeah.
Or, you know, any substance?
Drug driving is very prevalent now, much more than it ever has been before. Now, it's usually polydrug use, so it's multiple drugs in the system. So it's not just marijuana. It might be marijuana heroin, it might be just heroin, it might be meth, it might be a mixture. Same thing that we're finding on the overdose tests is that's our polydrug use, so.
Supervisor Flo?
Would you find it easier if you had some framework of guidance from the state? In terms of, you know, we're kind of in a gray area right now, where procedurally, I mean, listening to the district attorney and yourself, procedurally, not as strict as it probably was 40 years ago, but, you know, we're still kind of operating in a gray. Would movement from the state before movement from the county make you more at ease, for lack of a better term?
Yeah, I think Supervisor Hanson brought it up with, we need to decide, I believe that you all need to decide, are we gonna move on this, or are we just gonna leave it, allow the state to do what I believe they're going to do with medical marijuana, see how that impacts things, and then move on from there. But I mean, it's come up numerous times. You've had a lot of discussion about it, heard from me a lot. Again, being educated is the way to make a sound decision. But yes, to your answer, yes.
So I want to apologize. So I'm asthmatic. So I've never actually had marijuana. I just had this because of my thing. So I'm going to ask a really stupid question. And I'll open up to either you or Supervisor Defferting. Maybe either of you will know this. Okay, so you said about 60 joints, right? What is the average amount of joints that are used in a particular time, like consumption? Like, you know, let's say there's 60. Does that mean like that's like, you know, and someone uses like 10? I feel like 10 is probably a lot, but is it okay? All right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get a handle on in terms of, you know, like how much are we really talking? I mean, you know, that 60 might be a lot if someone's only doing 1 or 2. 60 might not be a lot if it's, you know, 10. I don't know.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I've never used cannabis either, never. So
Right.
I don't know myself. But
No, I wasn't expecting you to say, well, but you know, maybe you knew, you know,
Yeah.
like, is there a
But I
stat
mean,
out there?
yeah, I mean, it really does depend on someone's use, I guess. You know, somebody could look at that and be like, oh, that's like, you know, the equivalent of picking up a case of brewskis after work, and you know that'll last me for the weekend. And then some of them will be like, well, I just go through a case for an entire month, you know. And so, yeah, it really does depend.
Okay.
Well, in the words of one of our presidents, I never inhaled, but it's sort of like just same thing with alcohol, any other drug, you build up a tolerance to it. And certainly, you know, one joint, I honestly don't know, but you know, certainly that's probably one event for most recreational users.
And that's what I'm asking. Like, I just didn't know if there were stats out there, if we just knew what that is, not that, you know, I'm looking for any personal customers
Right.
here. Okay. Do you have any other thoughts?
I don't.
Okay. Any other questions for Sheriff Motz before we ask him to sit down? No? Okay.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much. Okay, any, yes, Supervisor Deputy.
I'll give my final thoughts here. So, you know, and I understand the concerns here, given by, both, the fellow supervisors here, as well as the sheriff, as well as the district attorney. Don't get me wrong, they're all valid concerns. And, if somebody does have an issue with this particular resolution or ordinance, I should say, I'm open to amending it. If somebody wants to propose an amendment to this, I would say, suggest that amendment, and then we'll go forward with that. I think that, for me, and I've said this before, you've heard me say this before, being a big fan of local government, I personally feel that that government comes from the ground up rather than the top down. And it is, I really think that the state follows the trends of the counties as the towns and municipalities. Now, granted, one could make the argument that counties are the administrative arm to state government, which is true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are just simply ones that take marching orders from the capital. There are checks and balances in our system that we can utilize today. And I feel that this is one of them. There was in the budget, there was part of the state budget that would address legalizing cannabis, but went to the budget committee. It was voted down by a 12-3 vote, pretty much by straight party lines. And so that was part of the budget part of it, but then, there might be still some future legislation coming forward. I know that I've spoken with now State Senate Rachel Cabral Guevara. She was an assembly person at that time. She was in favor of legalizing. She is like that today. And Roger Roth, when he was a state senator, he eventually was in favor of it as well. When he realized that most cannabis users are veterans, and I think that he thought twice about having some veterans being involved in the criminal justice system, whether that be just something like a fine or some sort of violation. I think ultimately he felt that that's not the direction that he wanted the government to take before he left his post. So anyways, I think that, and if there are concerns with this ordinance, I'm open to somebody making an amendment to it, and then we'll have that discussion. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Hanson, did you have something?
Possibly Supervisor Eisen has his hand up.
I'm so sorry, Supervisor. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From where I'm sitting, it sounds to me from the input that we have, from the presentation that we have listened to, that a decision today is premature. We've heard from prosecutor, we've heard from sheriff, we've heard from the advocate for change. I personally need a little more time to go over this particular resolution with a little more fine comb in order to make a decision. So what I would, knowing what we know now, I move to postpone this resolution for research and decision at the next meeting.
Okay, we have motion on the table to postpone this ordinance to the next time we meet, which we have to discuss yet, but to the next meeting. Do I have a second on that motion? Do you have discussion on the motion?
Yes, I need a clarification.
Okay,
If we
please.
could, and that probably is gonna come from Corporation Council. How do I phrase it? I'm not generally in favor the way Winnebago County in the past has just kind of kicked the can down the road when it becomes uncomfortable to talk about things. So, but in this case, I don't know that a month will be enough time. because I would like to see the state act. Please tell me if I'm out of order, is supervisor deputy open to a different time of maybe possibly greater than 30 days?
If it's the wishes of the committee.
I'm not going to second that particular motion at this time.
Are you going to put a new motion forward?
I would like to,
Okay.
but I don't know a time frame. That's my hesitation. I don't want to say 60 days and then just bloody this back up with nothing, no movement from the state. So I'm kind of looking for some direction from really anyone.
Oh, 1 second. Okay. All right. Thank you. No, we can only table within a meeting. Postponing this. We can postpone it, any amount of time within this term. So I just want to make sure there's no second on that. Okay. That does. Any other comments? I just have a couple. I do absolutely hear Supervisor Eisen comment about we need more time to do that. I feel the same way. I feel extremely conflicted in all this as well. I also agree. I don't know if less than 30 days is going to be material, considering that we first heard this in February.
I think it was February. Yeah.
February, right? And so we've already done that because we thought maybe the state would act, and the state hasn't for a variety of reasons beyond my pay grade. And so I also struggle with this, as Supervisor Hanson said, because I absolutely, my libertarian leanings say everyone does have the right of freedom, and we should celebrate freedoms and give people, the choice to live the way they want to live. But then I see the amount of addiction and how it just ruins people, just ruins families. As someone who grew up in an alcoholic household, I actually see the evils of alcohol, significantly so. And to me, it's when I hear that argument, I struggle with it just personally, because it's like, yeah, that's not to me a reason to legalize something else because of this, what alcohol abuse and addiction does. And I've just seen so much more addiction. We hear the reports of the overdose, and it's just, I don't know how anyone can live just like and not step back and be like, what are we doing? People are we're just struggling. So for me, I struggle with that because there's that side too. And there's a reason why I asked what the amount is, because I actually don't know. And that is, what are we talking in terms of, significance? And I feel like, as Sheriff Mons had mentioned, that this is probably more than what we would, typically think of actual use, of personal use. And then I think about what DA Spar had talked about and all the inconsistency. To me, at the very least, a resolution should be developed within legislative. And that should go to the state and say, you need to get your act together. Like, this is terrible. We need to have that consistency from area to area. So I feel like then there's the whole on item of unpacking the awfulness that comes with cancer and other people who can truly benefit from this kind of thing. But this ordinance doesn't really explicitly address that. I mean, it does it overall, but if this was more of a medical marijuana thing, I think I might have a different opinion on, because it's much more tangible and much more in. And there's an actual need, I think, to that. But this is beyond that scope, right? This is beyond the medical scope. And I would make a resolution, I would make an amendment to it, but I would, as Supervisor Eisen mentioned, this is such a large resolution. I don't feel comfortable making tweaks in this committee. It's almost like it would have to be worked on. And one last thing that I struggle with, and that is, if we vote on this and we vote down, then it's done. Now, of course, you could bring it to the county board and ask, we can have that conversation here. But it stops all development on creating something that might be more workable. So I'm going to caution before we ask for the vote, just to make sure that you do want us to vote on it, because knowing that that'll stop less that going to the board. Where, is there an opportunity, and I don't know, is there an opportunity to bring it back and rework it and bring it back to the board? Because I would re-entertain it, knowing all of the feedback that we've received. So before we get to that point, I might just ask if there are any other comments. And at that point, if you want to do it, that's cool. But if you want to pull it, I would absolutely support doing so, and we can bring it back up. Correct, Corporation Council? We could, am I right? Okay. All right, so that's my thoughts on that. All right, any other, Supervisor Eisen, please.
Yeah, thank you. All being said, I fear that it is not prime time for the county to deliberate on this issue at this time. And such, I would simply stay in and allow more progressive thinking to actually debate.
Supervisor Blumhead. Yes.
When we entertained this in February, I was under the impression that the state would have something completed by now. And I definitely hear your points about government being from the ground up instead of top down. I think that this deals with something that is a little bit more murky than that. So I do sit where Supervisor Stafford sits, and I feel like we're at a point where we should probably, I really hate to say this, just continue to wait. And if there's a certain deadline, which I'm sure that, if we don't assign, I think 30 days is too soon, government moves at the speed of a glacier, especially in Madison. But I think that at this point in time, I do agree I was going to dial. However, if you want to have a vote tonight, we can have a vote tonight.
I would like to have the vote tonight.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, any other comments before we Supervisor Hanson, one more opportunity?
I'm conflicted because of the lack of consistency from even Wisconsin from county to county. I would actually really like to encourage Supervisor Devereen to pull this. And I don't know when it would be a good time for you back. I may as well, I might be abstaining because I want this discussion and don't want this killed.
Yes, Supervisor.
So if there are certain concerns that this committee has in regards to this, I think in order for us to be constructive as we possibly can, let's talk about those concerns. And once we have an idea of what concerns that we actually have, we can have a list, a very concise list. And at that point, if we have an idea of, when we can get those answers, or, maybe we'll have a target date on when we can get those answers. At that point, then I would be open to postponing this particular ordinance. But I think that what we really need to do is we need to bring out these concerns and let it out in the air. so that, we could write this down and then have a time that we can address, get those answers done and come back with a more sculpted ordinance.
Right, and may I?
Yes.
I think that a lot of us have already expressed those specific concerns. You know, like we've outlined them. So I don't know if it would be beneficial to rehash all of that. Beyond, and I can ask Corporation Council, I know we have to be careful on how we interact as a committee. But if Supervisor Depperding pulls this ordinance and he wants us to list the specific feedback, can we direct that to him individually and be okay from a open meeting?
Parliamentarian.
Yeah,
I would prefer him to listen to the Zoom recording of this meeting.
Okay.
Because I think you all have voiced it. And I understand you're in the middle of this. But I think if you're back in the comfort of your own home and can hear the concerns that were raised,
got it.
you would be able to address them.
Will he be able to contact us individually for follow-up questions to what our comments were during the meeting?
Yes, as long as he's not trying to get a consensus,
Right, only clarification,
clarification,
and only individually.
because
You can't
you
get
don't
like
want to
the
have a
group.
negative quorum.
Correct. Okay. So with that, before I call for a vote, Supervisor Depperding?
I think I would still like to vote tonight, now that
Okay,
with all of this being said, I would like to have the vote tonight.
and if we have more than 2 abstentions, do we have enough to vote?
We do.
So we would still be able, yeah, we'd have. If we have 3 people abstain, what happens then to that? Not voted down,
Not voted down, but you would show on the vote, there would be 3 abstentions and however many, I mean,
would that then, open up the door for this to be brought back forward?
well.
Like if you voted it down, it could not come back to this committee.
This is being submitted by Supervisor Depperding.
Right,
And under the rules, he has every right to bring this forward to county board.
no, I'm not saying county board, I'm saying this committee. So if we vote it down, we as a committee cannot hear it again
Correct. For this session.
for this session. But if we have 3 people abstain, can it be brought back to the committee? You see what I'm asking?
I do. And I do not believe it can, but I would need to verify that.
Okay,
Because
well, oh, sorry, 1 second.
if I understand this correctly, an abstention essentially council said no. That's correct.
Okay. Final thoughts. Supervisor.
Yes, I'll be quite candid. We have some very weighty issues that I prepared for on this agenda. This particular issue was at the bottom of my list. And I challenge anyone that does more research and inquiry into issues that come before the board. And quite frankly, I didn't put in the time that this deserves. And that's why I will abstain, because this is not right. We've got 2 task force,
Yeah, that
and
is
we have 3 other issues that have been waiting on this committee and this board that are begging for answers. This is just another intellectual exchange. Time is not right.
All right, well, thank you. Okay, with that, any additional comment? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Nay? Abstain? Okay, that does not pass. We had Three of six. Okay, that goes to item 17, actually, item, call it new 9. Okay, moving on. I'm gonna use the number for the item that was listed on the agenda, so number 9, which is consideration vote resolution, amend section 8.0, written agenda of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors by amending rule 8.5.
Eight point oh written agenda of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors by amending rule 8.5, and I have an amendment to what you have. I believe Chairman Stafford, I gave you a copy right before this meeting. Just a brief explanation and comment. This just provides transparency so that anything that is on the agenda is made available publicly to any supervisor or member of the public before the meeting starts.
All right, so second?
Yeah.
We have a second, discussion. Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is after reading through this and looking at the other information that is available to accomplish this purpose. It is my opinion that this resolution is superfluous. The details of the committee and board meetings are published online, and there is no need to create additional work for the county clerk to advise the public about each particular committee's doings. It's all online. There's no need for this resolution, in my opinion.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? Not hearing none? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
4 ayes, 1 nay, it passes. Okay. Moving on to printed item number 10, consideration vote resolution, amend section 0.0, role of the county board supervisor of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to add section 0.4, addressing the use of Winnebago County owned electric devices by Winnebago County Board of Supervisors and outlining consequences for misuse of such electronic devices. Supervisor Kay Grant, please come forward.
Thank you, sir. So if I'm not mistaken, we've been working on this, I think since May. And it has gone before the county board. It was sent back to, or it came to you, it went to the county board, it came back to you. It went to IT, and now it's back to you. It has definitely been refined. I believe that we have got 9 other counties who have written their electronic device agreement. One of the concerns was, did everybody sign? What was it? Oh, a form stating that they understood what they were, how it was supposed to be used, how the county iPad was supposed to be used. Washburn County. Okay, so I'm a little bit too far ahead of myself. Here we go. The computer use policy And as I look at this, it talks about the computer use policy, the confidentiality policy, violation of these policies, certification, and everybody, elected officials, employees, our court counsel, our IT department have all got it. If I'm not mistaken, everybody has to sign this computer use policy to be able to have a county electronic device. So that's been taken care of, I believe, as far as one of the issues. There are 9 counties resolutions that you guys have before, everybody has before them, which kind of states what this one does. When it came for IT, it did not get refined a great deal, but Patrick Brenner has been on that committee, and he made mention that this is something that they have wanted to bring forward since 2014. So I kind of put this to rest for a while, but today I went back to the minutes of November 17th of 2014. Board rule, appropriate use of technology during board and committee meetings. And there are 2 rules here. One of them is the county issued electronic device usage, and the other one is appropriate use of technology during board and committee meetings. So just for everyone's information, this is not something that is just now occurring. It is something that has been tried, what, for 9 years now, to bring it before the county board. So there we are. I'm done.
Okay. With that, I move that we approve amend section 0.0, the role of the county board supervisor of the rules of Winnebago County Board Supervisors, to add section 0.4, addressing the use of Winnebago County owned electronic devices by Winnebago County Board Supervisors by behind. Second, discussion. Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I read through the paragraphs of the resolved data, it seems to me that that is the language of a contract. You have a contract between the employee and the county. Now, the county board rules is no place for a contract. Originally, Supervisor Haran brought this to the committee as a resolution, a final resolution for approval in the wake of the fiasco that we experienced over the past year and a half. And I personally said, you know, you should make this a rule because it is relevant to a rule. And then we presented the rule to the county board. And the county board said, this rule is vague. What do you want me to do? And so Supervisor Haran went back to the drawing boards, went back to the IT committee, went all over the state of Wisconsin with her persistence, and is presenting to us all of the contracts that other counties have. I think 2 or maybe 3 of these are actually board rules. Calumet County has a board rule. Another county has a board rule. All of these others are contracts that the individuals sign with their IT department or with the county. Look at Allegheny County, employee signature. So the bottom line is that this should be a policy that's adopted, that this contract should be given to the IT department and to have all of the employees of the county sign it because it's relevant to everyone. It's not just, the county board supervisors. It should be adopted by the IT department when they're issuing an iPad to supervisors, and they should sign it. This is not a rule. This is a contract.
Thank you very much for your feedback. Supervisor Flom, then. Supervisor
Yeah,
Green.
I want to thank you for your diligent work on this. This has gone through many iterations. You've come to the IT committee. I was at the IT committee and we workshopped this. I don't agree this is a contract. We already have agreements with employees. This is for elected officials to hold themselves to a higher standard because they are part of the public trust because they ran for office. So that's my opinion on it. I don't agree that it's a contract. I think this needs to happen now. We've been waiting for this for 9 years and arguing over semantics at this point is frankly stupid. So we need to get going.
Thank you, Supervisor Deputy.
I call a question.
Okay, before we do that, I think we might have it. Do you have any comment? If you don't, then we won't call the question. We'll just vote.
Okay.
No.
Okay, cool. We're good?
That's fine.
All right, good. All right, so with no other discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay?
4 ayes, 1 nay. That passes.
So this will be coming before the county board in September.
September. Correct. We missed it by like 8 hours.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that closes. That closes item 10 on the printed agenda. Item 11 on the printed agenda is modified fund report presentation. Ad hoc task force on per diem structure, Supervisor Jim Wise. Please, and Supervisor Elder, please come forward. Thank you. Hello.
Thank you, Chairman staff, for allowing that for time that today to present our findings and questions. It'll be shorter than the last time because there's not a whole lot of substance that changed. The report we're submitting today is very similar to this report previously submitted on, I believe it was July the 10th. The changes that we made are in response to questions asked during this, very pertinent questions that we took very strongly, and there are basically no changes, not basically, there are no changes to the conclusions. The conclusions are exactly the thoughts and everything else as it was before. So on July 26th, when we met, the conclusion of our meeting, that there was a consensus vote of 7-0 to forward this on to JPS.
Yeah.
Actually, the same data and the same everything.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Eisen.
Documented or undocumented. The work of the per diem ad hoc task force has convincingly demonstrated that Winnebago County Board of Supervisors are grossly underpaid in compensation in comparison to their Wisconsin county and Winnebago County municipal supervisors. And the argument of the papers. Flat salary of $6,000 increases all Winnebago County Board of Supervisors compensation, but fails to incentivize and fairly compensate those supervisors who contribute the most to the county board mission.
I refer to service on multiple committees, commissions, and boards, temporary study groups, and attendance to Wisconsin County Association and NACO functions, as well as attendance to other assigned meetings and functions. Therefore, I propose to substitute a salary of $3,000 annually for attendance at county board meetings and all standing committee meetings, plus a per diem of $75 per day or $50 per 4 hours for attendance at all other committee, commissions, and boards, as well as other local and remote assigned meetings, including WCA and NACO functions. I would like to amend the recommendations of the ad hoc task force and the recommendations that I have submitted are precisely what the Fond du Lac County executive and his county board rules presented to us in the structure committee meeting. I think going with a straight salary is not the way to go. You're going to compensate those supervisors that belong to one committee, and if we could go back to the results of the structure committee recommendations.
Are we talking ad hoc or per diem still?
Ad hoc per diem, but the information that was gathered from the survey that the ad hoc
I see what you're saying.
committee.
Okay, I wasn't tracking with you.
Yeah, and I'm just fumbling for those, figures so that I could, well, you're going to find that, one second. You're going to find that in the Fond du Lac County rules and in their compensation system, you're going to compensate supervisors for a salary, and you're going to compensate them for per diem. You're going to compensate them for per diem if they go to a state function, to a national function, which there is no incentive for a county board supervisor to take those extra steps.
Right. Okay, thank you for your feedback. I will say for item number 11, which we're just looking at the final report, I personally do not think it's appropriate for this committee to make any sort of changes to this report. So this report was done by a separate task force. We really had no work. This was all them. So those are great comments, great feedback. I think those are probably more appropriate when we get into the details of each of the resolutions that come forward. But in terms of the report, I consider this is the final report. This is it. And I think we need to move on. Supervisor Wise.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. I see where you're going with this. And, like you were saying, we have just this window right here to work in. And we wanted to do that. We don't know what's going to happen with the committees. We have our own hopes on it, but we don't know what's going to happen on it. A year from now or 2 years from now, possibly this could be rewritten, this part of it could be rewritten to gather those concerns from Supervisor Eisen. But we did not have that luxury. It was just, this was it for the right.
Okay, sounds good. So we're just talking about the report. We're gonna talk about some resolutions coming forward here. But I want to keep it just to the report. If there aren't any other, yes, Supervisor Eisen.
I think that the report lacks a focus, that there are only 3 choices for compensation structures. The first structure is per diem, and that's what we experience now. The second structure is a straight salary. That's what the task force proposes. The third alternative option is a salary and per diem. I would suggest that it would have been behooving to the task force to come in with those options to the county board. Now, we're hashing this over so that the county board doesn't have to spend as much time on it as we're spending on it. And I think that when this is brought to the county board, it should be brought to the county board with an option. Should we increase our per diem? Should we give a straight salary? Should we combine salary and per diem? I think we're missing the vote.
Okay, thank you very much, Supervisor. With that, do we have any other supervisor who has comment? No? All right.
I want to thank for the compilation of the report.
Yes.
I think it is well better than the scope of what any of us had either hoped or anticipated. The contrast and comparisons, I think, is very appropriate and very well done. So I thank you.
Absolutely, and also thank you for coming back to readdress some of the questions and putting that extra piece of work into it. Really, really appreciate all the hard work and all the follow-up work that went into this study, because this is not an easy study.
And just FYI, we did look at all structures. We looked at all 3, like Supervisor Eisen is suggesting, and this was our recommendation.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, with that, we're going to close that item. So we're closing printed item 11 on the agenda, moving to item number 12 on the agenda, consideration vote resolution. Amend Winnebago County Rules Section 20.0 to adopt a compensation package to pay Winnebago County Board Supervisors a monthly salary, ad hoc task force on per diem structure. Supervisor Jim Lai.
Well, hello.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. I'm gonna put my pen away. Yes, there are 2 of these. We'll do the resolution first. It is to amend Winnebago County Rule Section 20.0 to adopt compensation package to pay Winnebago County Supervisors a monthly salary. That's everything else I have to say on this.
I move. All right, thank you for that. Discussion, Supervisor Deputy?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I appreciate all of the work that you and your task force has put in, and
corporate counsel.
Yes, and corporate counsel. Yeah.
Huge.
The unsung hero did a lot of heavy lifting here.
What about the clerk's office?
And the
That's
clerk.
always-
Clerks, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just high fives all around. I want to say that, just being a county board supervisor, I do get this question a lot. They were like, well, how much time does it take to be a county board supervisor? Of course, I always respond back and be like, how much time do you want to put to this position? But the fact of the matter is that it can very much be another full-time job. And especially in the sense that we're now looking at our budget for the next year. We have a lot of more incoming revenue, and so the county is going to be involved in a lot more. And I'm already seeing it too with the amount of money that we're donating to possible nonprofits, things like that. Our responsibility has increased, and so that means that there's more time and time is money. I don't know. I still got a mortgage to pay. I still got a light bill to pay at home. And so it's I know that everyone says it's not about the money, and it's not about the money. But I mean, at the same time, we also want to make sure that we keep lights on at home too. So if people want us to, if there is objection from our constituents, from our Winnebago County residents, and stating that we're essentially giving ourselves a raise, well, I would say my response to that is, how much do you want your local government to get involved in this county? And I think this is more of a reflection of how much time we put in to this particular role as supervisors, because it is a lot of work. And we're all facing inflation, problems just as much as anyone else is. And I'm now myself, I'm stuck to a budget of like, all right, I've got this much money and I got to stick to that. So anyways, I don't want to ramble too much on this, but I just want to say that thank you for your efforts, and I will be supportive.
Supervisor Long.
I want to thank you and echo Supervisor Deputy. This is a lot of work. You guys met quite frequently. It is more involved in my opinion, than the work that I was doing with the task force that I was chairing, the structured task force. I think this is a little bit more deep. This is really getting into the meat sense, and really trying to decide what's best for this county. And I want to thank you for the work that you've done. I think you've done a phenomenal job, and I'll be supporting you guys.
Yeah, again, this is not easy. This is not easy, and you're not gonna, you're gonna have people with different opinions, and you're not gonna make everyone happy. And this is always such a tough topic, like Supervisor Deputy was talking about. I remember my first year as supervisor, someone during budget had proposed an increase, a modest increase. I think it was $100 or something. It was $200. And I feel like people were so afraid to even discuss it. I mean, that was my, was part of it was on Zoom, so it's hard to really kind of interact, but it's such one of those topics that no one wants to talk about, like just in general, right? So I think I really like the work that's gone into this. I think there's been some diligence in doing this, and I feel like this is a great starting point. The one thing I do have a question on, because I know it'll be asked, because I didn't see it, so if it's in here, I apologize. The impact to the budget, is there a proposed impact to what this fiscally means?
We did, I gotta remember what the number was.
It's about twice,
Yeah,
125 to 250.
because
Okay,
because you have to remember, there are some supervisors that don't take any compensation.
yeah,
So, I mean, it's very I
those that are
don't like to say unstable, but it's very inconsistent when it comes to, so it's paid out as we go, and I believe that I think there is a copy of it in here somewhere.
okay, I'm sorry.
27, page 17, 252.
I thank you.
I knew it was in here somewhere.
I couldn't find it, so,
In the ordinance.
okay,
Page 17.
thank you, Supervisor.
Oh, yeah, physical impact is, 253.9, and,
Okay.
that is for the current committee structure, and I believe that was the 13
Yes.
standing committees, which I believe there's.
Depends on where we end up, so.
Yeah.
I think right now, let's just say 13, because that's what we have.
The current budget is 125, and 125 goes, it's not always 125.
Right, so there's very little, we're talking about net result. It's not like this is going to cause any budgetary issues or bonding issues, or the last thing I want to do is increase the tax burden, or all of a sudden we have to start talking about raising taxes. Because I wouldn't support that, raising taxes to pay, those who are serving the community.
Yes, can I respond to the question, Jeffrey? Thank you very much for your comments on that. The way I look at this, I'll just, the way I look at this, the 36 supervisors are on a board of directors. A board of directors that is responsible for 177 or 72 million dollars. And we have a meeting at least once a month. And you just put that in perspective. What would it, in the private industry, we're not private industry, but what would it happen in the private industry? What do they pay? In private industry. There's a lot more. And here we're doing it for this.
And I would absolutely agree with that as well. And, I think for us, my only other thought is, and I know there was a couple of comments, I think this time and the last time too, in terms of incentive. I don't know, I think if you go through the hassle of getting 50 signatures and then going through it's a great experience. I recommend it. It's like anyone who's ever considered it, it's great just to get out and talk to people and see how people are really, what's going on in their lives. If you go through all that hassle and all that effort to do that, get elected, get on all these committees, I just think at that point, I don't know if a few dollars here or there relative to incentive is going to do anything. You're either going to come to a meeting prepared or you're not. You're either going to take it seriously or you're not. And that's the way business works as well. That's just, there's a certain level of expectation I would have for a supervisor. Like this is your expectation. And it's an even greater expectation for a chair of a committee, and even more so for a vice chair and chair of the board itself. And I think that we just have to say, this is the expectation. And be frank with people is when they're considering running, to understand that this isn't like a little side hustle. Like this is impacting real people. And in real ways, and this is a large county, the largest county in the state, right? So I think that we just have to be frank with people, but like, listen, we can't incentivize you one way or another on that. We just ask that you give your best in every instance that you have. And I don't know if anything else is going to work from that. So that's all I have. So I appreciate it. Thank you. Any other comments?
Just a clarification, if I could, please.
Yes.
In making the change, this might be more for corporation counsel, in making the change, I was going to ask you about whether or not it's considered employee, and I think you adequately answered that.
You want to, again?
I can certainly, because Supervisor Stafford actually raised it, and I know Supervisor Hansen raised it. So again, whether someone is an employee is governed by the nature of the relationship, not how they are getting paid. Be it either, they're getting per diem, they're getting salary. So currently, as you all know, supervisors get W-2 statement. Okay, that would suggest, okay, there's an employee. Supervisors can elect health or dental. They can access EAP. However, the county doesn't have an option to hire or fire supervisors. You can't get workers' comp. So quite frankly, it doesn't matter if you folks decide to go salary. It doesn't mean that the die is cast and you will be deemed employee. It's really, again, the nature of the relationship. Now, I will tell you, I've spoken with my colleague who had practiced labor for many years, and he apologizes for not being able to come. He's under the weather. And he echoes my opinion that it doesn't matter whether you're going to get paid by salary or per diem. It really depends on the nature of the relationship. So I don't think you have to worry about that. That answers you.
And there's one other follow-up. I know that currently on the per diem, a supervisor can elect, I'll just use me. I go to meetings and I don't submit a $50 per diem. I know that some do. I know that some supervisors don't submit any per diem. Does changing to a salary require them to then draw it? Can a supervisor elect not to be paid the 500?
Yeah, my opinion is they can elect.
I missed that. What did you, Mary Ann?
They can elect not to be paid.
Okay.
It's not a requirement to take the salary.
And we did put something on that in here about how we encourage people to donate, because if you at least donate it, it's a win-win scenario.
True.
There's a great scholarship fund.
It's very true. Anything else, supervisors? No. Okay, all right. With that, no additional discussion, so I'm going to call for a vote. All in favor? Sorry, we need to get the right one here. All in favor of amend Winnebago County Rules Section 20.0 to adopt a compensation package to pay Winnebago County Board of Supervisors a monthly salary. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? 4 ayes, 1 nay. That passes. All right, we're gonna close item 12 on the agenda, the printed agenda. Moving to item 13. Consideration vote ordinance, amend Winnebago County General Code, section 1.12 to adopt a compensation package to pay Winnebago County Board of Supervisors a monthly salary.
And this one's actually 3 pages long. Amend Winnebago County General Code, section 1.12, to adopt compensation package to pay Winnebago County Board Supervisors a monthly salary. This is an ordinance.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion. Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
4 ayes, 1 nay. That passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. That closes the printed item number 13 on the agenda. Moving forward to item 14 on the printed agenda, consideration vote resolution. Amend section 23, like we did again, amend section 23.0 and 23.1 of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to create 8 standing committees and major boards. Ad hoc committee structure review task force, Supervisor Jacob Blum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce a substitution amendment to this resolution. It happened here, and I have copies for everyone for this specific one.
Okay, thank you.
I also have copies for Corporation Council.
You have one as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I'm introducing it. Essentially, it is.
Oh, okay.
All right, this is the first portion of the amendment to implement the findings that the ad hoc task force on committee structure decided to go the direction. Now, there's a reason why the substitution amendment is being introduced, and I wish that this is something that we were able to get to in our deliberations with the task force. But because of the nature of time, I'm just going to go over the reason now. And this has to do with particularly the Land and Water Conservation Committee and the Farm Service Agency representative that is on that committee. That Farm Service Agency representative is a federal government employee by the USDA who is tasked with sitting on the Land and Water Committee by state statute. The concern that was brought to me by several members of the Land and Water Committee, and like I said, I wish this was heard a little bit earlier, but we've heard it now, is that there could be a concern about a USDA employee sitting on a committee that also governs the UW extension for this county and the Parks Department. So with that, all this does is it pulls Land and Water from the consolidation and leaves it separate as it currently is. So that is that. Everything else is the same thing that the task force presented to you at our last meeting. If we look here, we have Public Works, Judiciary and Public Safety, Finance and Administration, Natural Resources, Health and Human Services, Planning and Zoning, Aviation, Solid Waste Management Board, Land Conservation. Now, this does not touch legislative. The reason why this does not touch legislative is because if you look at the next resolution, section 23.2, as on the suggestion from Supervisor Eisen, legislative is being made a special committee. Because it is not particularly a standing committee and its membership is fluid, dependent on who is a chair. So that is why legislative is not included in this specific copy. So this is the first portion of the committee restructuring. I know that, many of you have had questions about this. I went over this at our presentation in the last meeting. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to go over them again. But if you look here, this is essentially what we had earlier. So if you look at land conservation, 5 county board supervisors, 1 who is a chairman of the Farm Service Agency Committee, or the county Farm Service Agency Committee member designated by the chairperson of the county Farm Service Agency Committee, and 1 citizen member, which is typically. Sorry? You have? Yes, please. Yeah.
Yes. So on August 4th, Governor Evers signed Act 32, which I think you were all aware of, but again, just so the audience knows, which changed the appointee on the Land Conservation Committee from the chair of the Farm Service Agency to quote, a person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under 91.01 sub 2A 1-7. So the language would need to be changed in this in this resolution to reflect that.
The substitute resolution.
The substitute resolution, because this just happened.
So since you're talking, I have a question for you procedurally. Do we need to dispose of the substitute first? We need to vote on the substitute, that this is the one that we're considering, and then we have that conversation, correct? Okay. So with that, sorry, Supervisor, I don't want to cut you off. We're good? Okay. So with that, was there any additional discussion before we vote on the considering the alternative substitute resolution?
The point of clarification here. So this vote would just be on that amendment that.
No, it basically gives us, then we dispose of that first.
Sure.
And we go to the second.
Okay, we'll go to the second. Okay.
So the one that was submitted in the packet would be then dispersed.
Yep.
And then this would be the
Point of
resolution.
clarification,
Yes.
once the substitute is put on the table, that's debatable just as the original motion.
And that's why I'm asking.
Yes.
We're debating right now. So if you have any discussion on that, if we adopt this, it's the discussion right now. And Supervisor Defferny was just asking that question.
So once the substitute is, then we get to go forward.
That is
just-
correct.
Just as if
Yes.
it was the original.
That's right. Absolutely.
Thank
So, yes, you bet. So with that, okay. I'm gonna take a vote then on that. So all in favor of, the substitute, resolution for amend section 23.0 and 23.1 of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to create 9 standing committees and major boards. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, now we are on the new one, the one that was just submitted That is the resolution that we are considering currently. So with that, open up for discussion. Supervisor Dufferty.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here goes. First off, it's great that we have actually looked at what we can do for the county to be as efficient as possible. And I saw that everyone on the task force put in their work and asked the hard, uncomfortable questions. This is, and I really appreciate Supervisor Flom's work on this, because I think that Flom did a lot of the heavy lifting as well, to make sure that that we're staying on task and that we're getting this done sooner than later, so that we can be ready for 2024 going forward. I do have one proposal here, and we'll see how this goes here, but I would like to make a motion to put the Aviation Committee onto the Public Works Committee. And I entertain a second on that.
That Mr. Chairman.
Yes, the motion is to move aviation into Public Works, and we're looking for a second. Okay, that dies. Sorry.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Okay. Supervisor Isaac.
As I have done in the past, and a minority report.
Well, I don't want to take your.
Yes.
It appears altogether logical that the number of committees, commissions, and boards, the county board, is a function of the size of the county board. It's obvious that the more supervisors on the county board, the more the county board can fill vacancies on committees, commissions, and boards. Winnebago County, Wisconsin consists of 36 supervisors with membership on 12 standing committees and 3 boards and commissions considered major. The proposed downsizing committee structure eliminates 29 committee members, so that 41 members are called upon to do the work that 70 members currently do. Now, had the county board downsized as in the majority of the Wisconsin committee restructures, namely Brown, Waukesha, Zaki, Fond du Lac, these were committees that were downsized. However, their downsizing followed a downsizing of the county board. But we are not reducing the size of the board. It is plain and simple. There is no need to reduce the size of the committees. I would like to share you with the results of a survey of county board supervisors and county department heads and share their sentiment for change. Supervisor survey results of 18 supervisors to the question whether your committee be combined with another replied, 4 strongly disagreed, 4 disagreed, 5 were neutral, 4 agreed, and 1 strongly agreed. This hardly supports a recommendation combined and downsized committees. County department head survey. Results of 20 department heads were asked if combining committees would save time and effort. 5 strongly agreed. 8 somewhat agreed. 5 were neutral and 2 strongly disagreed. From my vantage, sentiment for change appears to be more driven by department heads than supervisors. And as I have said time and again, the whole concept of changing, downsizing committees was initiated by the county executive through the personnel department head, who is now department administration head. This was not a county board initiative. It was placed on the organizational meeting docket, or maybe the first business meeting afterwards, by a representative who simply gave the story that the personnel director had given back in 2022, before the newly elected supervisors took office. I don't see any reason to change that structure. You're going to have eliminating 41 committee members, so that you're going to have 41 members called upon to do the work that 70 members currently do now, less the change from the land and water adjustment.
Right. So thank you. I do have this, thank you for pulling this together. I do have a question, since it's not cited on here, I'm curious where the survey, is this the survey that was done as part of the task force? Correct. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Is that right?
Well, when we
Or
met
did you
last,
did you do the survey?
when we met last meeting, I submitted a minority report from the task force.
Right, and I'm just
This is a
confirming.
minority report of the committee.
So I'm just asking,
You
because
have
it's
a
not,
copy of my previous statement.
right, I'm just asking, the source isn't on here, so I'm just gonna put it on there so I know, so I don't forget, that's all. Just
So,
citing, you know,
if you-
it's always good to cite things, you know?
If you look at the minority report that I had submitted from the task force, you'll see that the movement to restructure committees is a county executive initiative, evidenced by Mike Collier, Director of Human Resources, February 14th, 2022. Agenda item report to the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Rationale for county board turnover and need to guide onboarding county supervisors to county business has been answered by their assimilation into the existing committee structure. I don't feel it is a benefit to the county board to have 41 people doing the job that 70 are now doing. You're not going to have the degree of oversight of the committees. I can give you a personal example of the lack of oversight. I have served on this public safety committee for at least a decade. And at one point, I did chair the emergency management committee. And when the emergency management committee was an independent committee, the details of what went on in the world of emergency management were quarterly shared with members of the committee. We haven't had that kind of a response that there had been with the emergency management committee. And I'll tell you this. had I not been sitting with the Director of Emergency Management at her budget meeting with the then county executive, the issue of a replacement command post would not have been put on the table because the chairman or the director confided in me that there was a need, and at the budget committee, I spoke up to the county executive, and that put the command post on track, but it wasn't fast enough for the highway 100-car crash on Highway 41. So we're not going to advance the benefits of Winnebago County by having 41 supervisors do the work of 70.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just a few thoughts I have on this. I guess I'll just look at this holistically. The first is, I think we've talked about this already. One of my bigger concerns was the equity, if you will, of the amount of supervisors we have and the committees. And when we went through that initially, I asked that question of, oh, no, I'm blanking on his name, the guy from Tolis Law who came in. Thank you very much, Jay Curtis. I asked that question pointedly because I was curious about that, and his response was, no, those are not necessarily connected. They can be, but that's not necessarily a mandatory in his opinion. And I take their opinion quite with a lot of weight. So I think that for me, that's less of an issue as it was initially, going into this process. As a stats kind of guy, I'm kind of concerned about the survey results because sample is rather small, and even then it's kind of muddled. I look at that and I say, well, I think it's definitely worthy of a conversation of the board. There's not a clear consensus either way on this. And the last is, I don't know about the impetus of this. I really don't. But I do know my involvement initially in all of this because I brought this up and I wasn't talking with anyone from administration because I was, I don't know, 6 months new, 8 months new at the time. And I had actually had this in the suite of resolutions at the organizational meeting, and I pulled it. And I pulled it because, number one, I put it in because I wanted to force the conversation. Because I do believe that we should, as good stewards of those we serve, we should constantly ask, are we doing the right things? Are we serving the people in the right way? Just asking the question, making sure that we're doing what we need to do for people, to help people. And it was clear to me that as we're going through the organizational meeting that we needed more effort, more time, and more study, and not to overreact. And that's why I pulled it. And I believe that that is what was the impetus to Supervisor Sarah to bring this forward as well. She kind of saw what I was doing and started pushing the issue. And I think that's how it worked. Now, I don't know the involvement of the administration in the underpinnings. I'm not really a good underpinnings kind of guy. I am what I am.
Yeah, but remember that the cover letter to the resolution written by Mr. Collier made the same recommendation, and that was the letter that was submitted by Supervisor Sarah when she had suggested that we take a look at committee structure.
Right, and all I'm saying is,
And I supported the idea of looking at committee structures,
right,
because it hadn't been something that was done since 2007. So it was time to look at it. We looked at it, but I don't think there is need for a change, because number one, the county board did not downsize. Number two, the UW Extension, Government Center suggests that if you downsize, if you're not satisfied, or if you think that the committee has too much power and you want to draw that power back to the county board, then you can combine them with somebody, with somebody else. Those are the two circumstances that was presented in the memo that the supervisor Deffending had passed around to the members of the committee. And I followed it up, and that's what it said.
Right.
I got it in my file someplace. If you want to see it.
So just, I just want to finish my thought here. There's two other thoughts I had, and that is, I remember we had this conversation on board, and I don't remember who it was. It was a really great comment from one of the supervisors where and I like to listen. I like to listen to people. And I mean, we all like to listen, of course, but I really like to listen and consider what they're saying. And the comment was, we want to make sure that this isn't like picking favorites, right? Or like, we're just trying to get rid of a certain thing or minimize structure from someone else. That was a concern of mine too, because anytime you start messing with things, you have to ask a question, is it doing the right thing for the people we serve? I mean, that's really what this is all about. And I feel like there was a lot of rigor, and I really do think that the task force did a good job of going through and really outlining everything. And I feel like a much higher comfort level that this isn't just someone picking and choosing winners or trying to make some sort of, power play or whatever you want to call it. And I think it's evidenced by the fact that when comments did come up, that they were all considered. It wasn't just like, oh, you just be quiet, like, with land and water as an example. So I really think that this is a really good structure from that point of view. Is it perfect? Yeah, I don't know. But I think it's a step in that direction. And the only other thought I have is with emergency management. I was not part of the board or the committee when it was separate. That happened right when we went into this new term. But I will say that I do think that Director Rasmussen does a good job of communicating what's going on with emergency management. He does it in different ways, and that's okay. He is invited here. I try to invite all of the different department heads at least once a quarter to come and speak as an update. I don't have to look the last time he was here, but it was probably about 5 months ago that he was here. So I do try to do that as well to make sure that we get some face time. But there are other ways to communicate and let people know, because there's a difference between self-service and serving those that we serve, meaning that I'm not personally very interested in just learning about something just to learn. Like, I want to know something so I can help those we serve. So I think we have to, when we engage department heads, we have to ask, is this just something I want to know, which is fine? Or is this something that by knowing this or having the discussion will make things better for somebody or make governance run better, right? Those are the kinds of things that I'm interested in. And I think that emergency management has done a good job of that. And I do commend Director Rasmussen on that. I think he's doing a good job with that. If we had unlimited resources, unlimited time, sure, we could all meet and do that, but I think it's a good balance, personally. So with that, and I'm going to support this. So with that, any additional discussion? Oh, I'm sorry, Supervisor.
I would like to refer to corporate counsel for the amendment regarding land conservation, regarding Act 32 for governor use and things.
And unfortunately, I do not know why your copies do not have the number line. But what we have on our computer has number lines, but.
This would have been by corporation.
May have been issued.
Oh, okay. So it's the last paragraph under land conservation. And given Act 32, what I would suggest it should read, This committee consists of 5 county board supervisors. One who, this is where we're gonna change it, who is the person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under WSStat 91.01, open paren, 2, close paren, open paren, lowercase a, close paren, 1 to 7. And then you go back, and 1 citizen member. So the language you're deleting on your copy is one who is the chairperson of the County Farm Service Agency Committee or other county farm service agency committee member designated by the chairperson of the County Farm Service Agency Committee. That's the line, that's the phrase you're deleting.
So let me read that back. to you.
Yep.
So this committee consists of 5 county board supervisors, comma, one who is a person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under WSStat 91.1,
Yep, 0.01.
91.01, open paren 2, close paren, open paren A, close paren, open paren 1 through 7, close paren.
Actually, it's not open for 1 to 7, it's
Just 1 to 7.
just 1 to 7.
Okay.
Yeah. That would have been.
It was not.
Yeah,
You're gonna vote on this.
should we vote on this? But we probably
Okay,
should.
let's vote on the amendment.
Yeah, let's do that, just to be safe. So is there a motion?
Motion to accept that amendment that we just did. Which is, and I will read it again.
Okay.
This committee, 5 county board supervisors, comma, one who is a person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under WSStat 91.01 2A 1 through 7. Comma. And 1 citizen member, which that was the original language.
Okay, any discussion on that amendment? Okay, no discussion, so all in favor say aye. Aye, opposed? Anybody yes, okay, okay, we have 5 yes. Passes unanimously. Okay, we're back to the resolution as amended. Any additional discussion?
One more thing.
Supervisor Plum?
I would like to thank Corporation Council. I would like to thank Victoria, Melanie, everybody there. I called you, I don't know how many times. There were a number of edits, there were a lot of department heads to reach out to. There was a lot of work that went into this, and I mean a lot. So the wordsmithing on this, I can't thank you enough. I would be dead in the water without you guys, so I really appreciate it.
And then I'm just gonna say again, I thank you so much for this ad hoc task force. Again, just like with the per diem, this is not easy stuff. Yes,
You said that we could talk on this.
you sure can. Yeah, yeah, please come forward. Let me just finish my, I'll talk and you come up. That's perfect. I just think this is hard work to do and a lot of diligence and effort and blood, sweat, and tears went into this. And thank you. Thank you again. Yes,
Tom Egan, 3017 State Road 116, Iowa, Wisconsin. I too want to thank both task force. They did a lot of work, awful lot of them, all of them did. I sat in on theirs probably more than yours, probably once, I think here, maybe twice, but I did watch it on the screen, so. And some of these here I don't really understand. I have to agree with Paul somewhat. If the board would have been downsized, I could have probably understood a lot more. I just wonder when it all comes down to it, like, I'm gonna say Public Works, I'm on both of them committees there. And that's probably where some of the problem is, but I am on highways and facilities. There's on 5 on each one now. So when you have that meeting, are you gonna go instead of hour and a half, 2 hours, or are you gonna go 3-4 hours now to cover that? You know, because you're gonna be covering two completely different things. I mean, highways, you're looking at that, they're spending a million some dollars. All the facilities in Winnebago County, you're gonna be covering on something. So I just kind of, there's the first one I just looked at is, how would that be handled?
I'm gonna say probably. I mean, think about JPS. I mean, we cover so many different areas and our meetings go about that, so.
Right.
What?
However, I would like to add that if the chair would like to split up those meetings to make them shorter, that's under the purview back to the chair.
Okay, that's fine. But then we just approved the money and all this and that, so we got people coming back more than what we did before. And you might say it's gonna be less money, which I'm not, I was, whatever, for that. But, so that's one of the things, and I can see down in finance, in administration, I don't know where the word administration fits into there. Why administration to even be in there?
That's a question I have.
Sure, and I know I saw you earlier, obviously you can come up. The one reason that we had was because of IT. And so instead of, we were looking for a home for the IT department.
IT could have went any place. but they
It
don't
could have gone
have
anywhere, it could have
IT.
gone to JPS, it could have gone to finance, so the reason why we were able to say finance and administration was chiefly because of IT, and IT is an administrative function, and so that was the name change. Outside of that, they only gained the IT department, and there's one line change in there, that's it.
And how does UW Extension and Ag and Parks fit together? I'm just asking these questions because I get asked these questions like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, I'll have a present, if this passes tonight, I'll have a presentation.
So I just, there's a lot of questions still out there, which I'm sure you guys are getting them all the time, but that what you want me to do is just refer them to you guys, answer questions.
And I think for the ad hoc task force, this is good feedback, because as they get ready for a special orders meeting
Right, September.
in September, these are the types of things that they have an opportunity to address and clarify up front as well. So this is great that we're getting this, this committee is getting this feedback for the ad hoc task force.
But that's some of them, I guess you can go round and round about it. I don't know really why just taking the two committee, whatever, three committees off that we would have had and putting them on here. And then you're just gonna have chairman of just a few of them, and who's gonna answer that? Chairman, one thing you haven't got on there is committee on committees. That's not, you don't even have that on here, and they pick out the committees as far as the board. Hopefully it stays with the board.
But that's not a standing committee.
Well, hopefully, yeah, it's in the book.
Right.
Hopefully it's with the board though to go ahead and still pick the committees on committees, and it don't turn out to be somebody else. Thank you.
I have a couple.
But just state your name. Like
I'm
somebody who you are.
My name is Morris Cox. I'm at 2150 Deer Prairie in Fox Crossing.
Thank you. And also a supervisor.
Yes, I'm a supervisor of District 27. I'm looking at enterprise operations, Parkview, aviation, solid waste, and highway. They all have their individual budgets. They all have their individual alignments and how they, earn money or bring money in. They're all separate, very separate in how they're handled with regard to those committees. And I'm concerned that they're blended in a way that they may not, because of maybe it's certification, maybe it's how the licensing for, nurses and whatever in Parkview. Maybe those things need to be looked at before you combine them into a group like Health and Human Services. You know what I'm getting at? Those bother me a little bit. The finance and administration, I heard your definition before, but when I went back through the resolution on amending section 24 of the rules of Winnebago County Board of Supervisors, and I looked to line item 133. This is reviews. This is under finance and Administration Committee reviews proposed personnel policies amendments as submitted by the Director of Human Resources and Winnebago County Executive, and submits recommendations to Winnebago County Boards, the Winnebago County Boards for consideration and legislative action. We don't deal with the county executive or the administrative coordinator or anybody in the executive office directly from PNF or to PNF. They're separate. They're a separate entity. They're not part of the board. Okay. And we keep them a separate entity because we're apportioning money for them to spend later. Okay. So I don't know if that's a good definition, finance and administration. If you want to call it something else and slip that line 133, get the heck out of there. You know, we are very concerned about checks and balances between the executive group and the board. That's the same thing with all the committees. Their checks and balances, their due diligence is very important in each case, each department head. Without that, you may as well be, you know, playing checkers. It just isn't working. We have to be able to understand what's coming to each committee and how it is passed eventually and passed on to the board to be, you know, voted on.
Right.
That's all I have to say. I just hope you take a real good look at it.
I appreciate it. I know Corporate Counsel Judson tab.
I just want to point out that the current rules under personnel and finance, as you probably know, state review proposed personnel policies and amendments is submitted by the personnel director and county executive, and submit recommendations to the county board for consideration and legislative action.
So that'll
So
stay right out.
this- That's exactly basically.
Already have it in your rules.
And we had reached out to department heads to try to get their input. And we basically got, I would say 90% of input. There's still a couple out there, but that's why obviously the Judiciary Committee is looking at this to learn and to answer any questions. But I just wanted to make a point that what is referenced in 24
Yeah.
either comes from statute
Or comes around.
or from the rules as they exist now.
I understand. I apologize if I
No,
got
no,
somebody.
no.
I'm concerned in how we approach the executive part of our dual offices, okay? Our board is a legislative body, and we don't want the executive moving in on us in any case.
I think it's important for everybody to stay in their lane, and we've had this
Correct.
discussion. So, and as you know, I have two masters. I have the county executive, who is my supervisor. But then, as we've also talked about, I also serve the county board of supervisors. So you're right, there is a check and balance. You folks the supervisors typically deal with policy, county executive, as you know, deals with operations. But again, just to answer your question, what is in 24 was based on statute or the existing law.
Okay, any additional discussion?
Yeah, if I may add, I think it was separation of powers and checks and balances were a very important thing that this task force looked at. This task force very strongly believes in the power of the county board and doesn't believe in executive overreach, and that was not our aim, that was not our job, that was not our goal. Believing in a robust and strong county board is something that we very much took to heart during this process. And that's what we have here. That's what we believe we put together.
Okay,
When naming our group, administrative group, are we not adding to the understanding that maybe the administrative coordinator will be coming into that group?
It's semantics plus the IT committee. That's all there is.
I understand. I think what I'm hearing from Supervisor Cox is there's a concern with the term administration and that being confused with not the governance of the administration of the county, but the actual departments or the actual function of administration, which are two different things. So administration in this way actually refers to two separate things. One's a verb and one's a noun, if you will. Right? And so that's, I think, what your concern is, just to make sure that we're not muddling the water. So that's what he's saying. Right? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but.
You're saying it very close to right.
Oh,
I just don't.
I'll take that.
I would sooner not have it named
Right.
administrative if we could find another way to.
Thank you. Supervisor Isaac.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boy, you've got eyes in the back of your head.
I try.
As we approach a vote, I would like to make a comment on the combination of health, human services, and park. My prediction is if this combination becomes for real, I guarantee you that under the priority budgeting techniques of the administration, Parkview and its 270 employees will be eliminated. Okay. Now, vote.
Thank you for your comments. With that,
Just very quickly, I understand the change is difficult. I understand that it's uncomfortable. I think this is a great step in the right direction as far as combining and increasing efficiency. And for oversight, it all comes to the county board anyway.
and one comment on the health and human services. I'll make two comments really quick. First is, I had the same concern. It gives me some level of comfort that Outagamie County has Brewster Village under their health and human services. That gives me some. And the other is, as long as I'm a supervisor, I will fight anyone to get rid of Parkview. I think we need to serve our community in the bloomers aren't getting any younger. We need to figure that, we need to figure that out and provide for the community. So I wouldn't support that specific thing down the road. So with that, I'm gonna call. Yes, Supervisor.
Okay. The task force initiated a survey to county board supervisors. I'd like to share with you an analysis of the survey data.
Is this, I'm sorry, could I just ask a question? Is this different from the one that you talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Okay,
The supervisor survey analysis had 19 returns, with 1 return unanswered, leaving 18 replies. 11 supervisors over 2 years longevity and 7 supervisors with less than 2 years longevity. Of the 18, 5 were on 2 committees, 9 were on over 2 committees, 3 were on 1 committee, and 1 gave no answer. Of the 18 supervisors, that's 50% of the population. 3 said they were underworked. 13 said they worked just right, and 2 said they were overworked. Of the 18, degree of satisfaction with committee participation, 10 were very satisfied, 4 were somewhat satisfied, 2 were neutral, and 1 was somewhat dissatisfied. Of the 18, should your committee be combined with another? 4 strongly disagreed. 4 disagreed. 5 were neutral. 4 and 1 strongly agreed. The supervisors with over 2 years of service, 6 said they should not be combined. 5 were neutral. The supervisors with less than 2 years of service, 5 said yes, could be combined, and 2 said no. So I leave you with the statistics, with the experience, and with the prognostication. And I'll retire to the vote.
Sounds good. All right, so,
One quick question.
yes,
What is the date of the special orders meeting?
would that be September 5th? I know that because I'm looking at a calendar. September 5th.
Okay.
That's Tuesday.
All righty, thank you.
Okay, with that, no more discussion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No,
4 ayes, 1 opposed. That passes. That closes printed item 14 on the agenda. Moving to item 15. Consideration vote resolution, create section 23.2 of the rules of Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to make legislative committee a special committee. Ad hoc committee structure review task force, Supervisor Jacob Sloan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move to approve resolution 08, 2023, create section 23.2 of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to make the legislative committee a special committee. And this was.
We have a second? We have a second. Go ahead.
Sorry, this was a suggestion by Supervisor Eisen that the nature of the legislative committee in itself is a special committee as fluid membership dependent on the chairs of the committees and other people from the state and federal level come into the fray. Additionally, some of those people, including the state legislators, do have votes on those committees, and they are not members of the Winnebago County Board, and they hold other offices. So I would move to have this be moved as a special committee. They don't?
They don't get to vote.
Pardon me?
But, legislators don't get to vote.
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay, all right, then I stand corrected then. But given the fluid nature of the legislative committee, the task force recommends that this be named a special committee. Nothing would change in the day-to-day operations. It would just reflect the committee chairs in terms of its structure, how many committees and boards, those major ones, they would be those chairs. So if we go down to 9 major standing committees and boards, we would have 9 members of the legislative committee, plus the chairman of the Winnebago County Board, in addition to those. So that's what I have here. If anybody has any questions, please let me know.
Okay, any additional discussion on this item? I'm just gonna say, just on a related topic, this might be the path that you would consider for committees as well. Because I do agree, I heard that loud and clear that that's something that we as a board want to control. Might be something for future consideration. With that, any additional? Okay, I'm gonna call for Corporation Council.
You just need, I would say, to reference in line 19, since you now have the substitute for land conservation as a standalone committee, to add solid waste management and land conservation.
We do that as a friendly or just
Okay. You know what? Why don't we be consistent
vote?
and vote?
Okay. So we, I move to. Well, actually,
I move to add a amendment on line 19 with So it would read human services, planning and zoning, aviation, land conservation, and solid waste.
The second, any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. We're back to the resolution as amended.
I would just like, please, there's a note, if you read the final report of this task force, that we recognize that there are many other committees, commissions, and boards that are floating around out there. One of them being the Committee on Committees. We recommended that they don't be touched now, but if they are to be reviewed, such as made a special committee or to go into some amalgamation in the future, that they be done then. So we recognize that those were not included, but if you read the report, we recommend that they be looked at some point. Doesn't mean you have to do anything with them, but it just means that we acknowledge that they're there and that we looked over them, and that for expediency's sake, because we wanted this to be done by budget, we weren't rushing, but we wanted to focus on the major ones. The Committee on Committees is an important committee, but it only needs once a term. So that was our vote on that.
Supervisor.
The mandate from the original resolution only addressed the 12 standing committees and the 3
Right, that's correct.
boards.
Yeah.
So, you know,
We're good. Yep. Okay, thank you.
We thought that was outside of our mandate.
Right. And my only point was that could be a potential pathway in the future,
If
separately.
we'd like to take it up.
Right, exactly. Alrighty, on that note, okay, seeing no additional discussion, all in favor of, resolution, create section 23.2 of the rules, Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to make legislative committee a special committee. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. That closes item 15 as printed on the agenda. Moving to item 16, consideration vote resolution, amend section 24 of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors Ad Hoc Committee Structure Review Task Force. Supervisor Jacob Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a substitute amendment for amending section 24 of the rules of the Winnebago County Supervisors to bring us in line with the resolution that we passed on amended section 23 and 23.1. And I have the relevant copies here.
Oh, thank you. Okay, before we get this out, I have a motion. Do you know the specific sections that changed?
Yes, the only section that changed was the land conservation committee that was added back in. If you look at the original resolution, it was lumped into natural resources, which has been taken out and maintained as its own section 24.9.
Got it, okay, there it is.
Yes, and we are also going to have to change it to reflect the same language that was changed because of Act 32.
Okay, so I suggest that we first entertain this substitute motion, get that on the table, and then make the motion for amendment. I'm sorry, I think I need, I'll second your motion. The motion's been seconded to consider this substitute resolution. Any discussion on the substitute only? Supervisor, yes.
now, this will be a 2/3 vote when it goes to the county board.
I actually don't know, Corporation Counsel.
So it's changing the rules.
No, but it was, there was a resolution that passed that talked about if there was a change in committee structure during this term, it would only require a majority vote. That resolution.
The organizational meeting.
Yes.
You're amending the rules.
No, I know what the rules say, but there was a
You're amending the rules other than at the organization meeting. It requires a 2/3 vote.
But there was a resolution during the organizational meeting that said if there's any resolution or ordinance that goes forward during this term that will address committee structure, the only vote would be a majority vote. And I actually have the language for that. But that happened in April. Here it is. It was resolution 30-04/2022. And it said, Rule 3.8. It quoted, the rules of the board shall be amended during the 2-year period only by a 2/3 vote of those present at a meeting, except at the annual organizational meeting, at which time a majority of those present shall rule. The rule may be waived by the Winnebago County Board chairperson as a result of a local, state, or national declared emergency. This is the language. All Winnebago County Board of Supervisor rule changes affecting committee structure shall be postponed to a later time, and the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors shall adhere to the usually organizational majority voting requirements at said meetings. So the board voted that if there was going to be a change in committee structure during the 2 years, it would only require a majority.
That's your second gotcha.
Gotcha? I mean, that's what,
Organization.
that happened during the, yeah, that happened in April.
Gotcha.
Okay, so with that, any discussion on the substitute resolution? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Hey,
4 ayes, 1 nay. And, okay, and then if you wanna,
Mary Ann, about amending section 24.9 to revert to Act 32. We're not going to reflect Act 32. Or would you recommend that language here?
Again, we don't have a line number, but I would say they don't have that. They don't have it. Land conservation consists of 5 Winnebago County Board Supervisors and 2 citizen members. One who is a person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under WISTAT 91.01 sub 2 sub A 1 to 7.
we'll be with you. I just want to get this amended.
Just a comment.
Just 1 second. I just want to get this dispelled first.
Farmland preservation.
Just have some specifics to iron out before we actually consider the resolution.
You gotta take out. Get all of this out. Take that out, that one out. Take that one out. So you wanna have. Person, one who is a person engaged in an agricultural use. You wanna read that?
That's fine, that's right now.
The person engaged in an agricultural use as defined under WISTAT 91.01 sub 2, open paren 2, close paren, open paren, lowercase a, close paren 1 to 7. And a citizen member. Are you looking for that?
No, I'm looking here at planning and zoning. They're not listed separately.
See, this came
So
out.
let's-
There should have been.
It's 24.3.
Okay, listen, let's focus on this one and then we'll get to you. But let's just focus on this one first.
This copy is not.
the copy that was just distributed.
And a citizen number.
So,
24.
Supervisor Colby, you ready to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, please.
The deal that was there.
Okay, all right.
You make your housekeeping change.
Okay,
Let's see that.
let's get this amended first before we go to the subsequent, please. Okay, you have a motion?
Yes, so I would like to, go under 24.9 Land Conservation Committee. On the top line there, Land Conservation, which is Winnebago County Supervisors. And then we'll strike two citizen members, one who was the chairperson of the County Farm Service Agency created in 16 USC, or other County Farm Service Agency committee member designated by the chairperson on the County Farm Service Agency committee. And so we're gonna strike all that. And then instead of that, it will say, I will read. And, quote, a person engaged in agricultural use as defined under WISSTAT 91.01, open paren 2, close paren, open paren A, close paren 17. And then it will say, comma, and one citizen member.
I'll second, since we've already.
And all that does is reflect the change from Act 32 in the first resolution.
Any comment on the amendment? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye, opposed? Okay, that passes as amended. We are now looking at the amended, resolution. And before we go on, we do have a gentleman up here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Chuck Ferry, Winnebago County Board, District 30. I'm also Vice Chair of the County Board. For the record and for the public to understand, the proposed changes will only be effective at the next term.
Yes, that's correct.
In addition to that, I would suggest the appointment to the Land Conservation Committee should only be effective at the next term. For the benefit of the person that currently holds that position.
I guess the question I have, because that change was affected by the state and not anything we did here, can we hold that person there even though in the current term?
I'll confer with the chair to get his opinion, but if that is the case, and I don't know why it would be, then I would recommend the person that currently holds that position be reappointed. Thank you. Just wanted for the record and everybody to know.
And my guess is that this person who currently holds the position would fall under the same definition.
Oh, big time.
100%.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, now we're on the resolution.
So there's one more thing.
Okay,
So there's two more things. So there's just some grammatical and housekeeping things here.
okay,
Under planning and zoning, instead of 4, it would say 24.4.
okay. It's page 2.
Yep.
And then somehow, I don't know why you have to work. It should not be here.
Okay, you,
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. 109. Remember that? Oh, yeah.
Okay, so two things quick.
okay,
Under planning and zoning, it says just 4. So we'll bump that out into a header and it would say 24.4.
what page, I'm sorry.
That would be page 2.
Okay,
And that's my fault because my printer cut off.
oh, okay,
So 24.4, not 4, 24.4 planning and zoning committee.
okay,
And then if you go to page 3, instead of, it says 24.6, scratch 4, and then bump out that section, it would say 24.6 health and human services.
We need to-
Yes.
Yeah, that what I did.
just to be consistent, as Corporation Council has five, we will vote on those as well. So all in favor of those two, amendments? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passes. Okay, now we're on. Now we're on. Any additional comments, thoughts, questions on this resolution? Okay, not seeing any. All in favor of? Give me 1 second here, please. All in favor of amending section 24 of the rules of the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
4 ayes, 1 nay, that passes. And that also closes item 16 on the printed agenda. We already spoke to item 17 as printed. So we're now moving to item 18 as printed, which is the next meeting date, which we do need to talk about real quick. And that is our standing time, which is the first Monday in September, happens to be Labor Day. So we have to select a new date. I put out there August 28th only because that allows us time to have a discussion and still get on the docket for the September board. However, we don't have a note taker if we meet at 6 p.m. So we have, I'm looking for, we have a couple options. We can move that meeting and meet at 6 p.m. on September 11th. Or we can unanimously vote and meet in the day. County board rules say that as long as we as a board or as a committee unanimously agree that we're gonna meet before 3 o'clock, we can surely do so. I would like to understand from your perspectives and timing and schedules, if there's a preference.
And the day would be August 28th.
The day would be August 28th, and we would convene at an earlier time. Well, I guess I'm gonna ask for our note taker, what's.
Yeah, I can take notes.
Okay, all right.
But, I mean.
We do have a secretary, and you would be more than willing, but it's also difficult to be a secretary and participate in the conversation. I get that.
I hear that for one other committee.
Yeah. So. I think it's been a good meeting on September 11th. We could just meet at 6, if that is less disruptive. Just means that anything that we act on at that meeting won't be considered until October.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have my schedule in front of me. The conference in Wisconsin Dells, is that on the 11th or is that later?
17th.
17th, and apologies, not remembering.
Okay. So are we saying? I kind of like going a week later because we want to, I would like to give time for people to prepare for that meeting. That does give time, for people versus having 2 meetings in August.
I'm fine with September 11th.
Supervisor Isaac, are you okay with September 11th at 6 p.m.?
I'm looking.
Okay.
Holidays coming at the end of September.
Oh, okay, so we're good. So we're going to move that meeting then to Monday, September 11th. The deadline for submission is 2 weeks prior. Would be August 28th. So deadline for agenda items due Monday, August 28th. The meeting would be Monday, September 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. Okay, all right, so that's it. That closes item 18. And we're looking at item 19, which will be the quickest item of the night. That is, I move to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much.